and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. Before we get to the show, let's get the pleasantries out of the way.
First of all, our website. If you want more information about our little podcast, go to wearethecontrarians.com. That's where you'll find links to our old episodes, to our Patreon channel, and to our awesome Contrarians merch.
You can show your support by buying a Contrarians mug or a pillow.
I like the laptop bags myself.
Second of all, if you enjoy the show, tell your friends. Or even go a step further and leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts.
Finally, if you want to reach out directly to us, that's what social media is for. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Contrarian Prime, or check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/ContrarianPrime.
Julio runs our official Twitter account at Contrarian Prime, but if you want to give me a piece of your mind or just want to banter about pro wrestling, you can follow me at Contrarian Alex.
That's it. That's our intro.
Now, time for the show.
This is our
And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for Mad Max Fury Road.
Julio, my wave pad, the record icon is a jack-o'-lantern, and when I pressed record, it lit up like a jack-o'-lantern. That's awesome. Sometimes the internet is cool.
You are confusing listeners because this is going to drop on November 10th. Jack-o'-lanterns are a thing of the past.
I think at this point, our listeners know that we record. Well, it could be a Thanksgiving pumpkin. I mean, you never know. But I think our listeners know that we record in the past. I just noticed that while we hit record. Hello, and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my co-host and friend Julio. We have some additional guests this evening. We'll throw it over to them in just a moment. Try to get our pleasantries out of the way as quickly as possible. Julio, how you doing this evening?
Doing great. Packed house, as you said. I can't wait to just open up the audio waves to our guests. But I'm fine. I watched Tom Hardy drive for 2 hours. I've done worse things with my life.
I feel in a lot of ways this is a long time coming. I feel like This is one of those movies that you and I have jested about for a long time, and I'm pretty sure friends of ours and longtime listeners know how we feel about it, but should still make for an entertaining episode. We are here today to discuss 2015's Mad Max Fury Road, a goddamn Oscar nominee, and in many categories. We'll get to that in the second portion of this when we discuss the world that was set on fire by this road trip movie, I guess. And before we get to that, though, we got our first half. Like I said, we're going to blitz through this opening here so we can get to our guest, Julio. Here on the Contrarians, we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. That's our battle cry. We'll find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is highly rated, a lot of times known as certified fresh, with that nice little TM next to it, that logo, that IP that Rotten Tomatoes is oh so proud of. What we'll do with those movies is cut them down to size, point out some of the plot holes, poor performances, some of the things that just were kind of underplayed or, kind of swept under the rug by critics, just so they could get at that shiny red tomato. Being that Mad Max Fury Road is 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, this first portion of the podcast, we'll be cutting this movie down to size. That's what we're doing here. On alternating episodes, though, we find a rotten film on Rotten Tomatoes. We typically shoot for about 30% and below, and we'll do just what you think we would with it. Make a case for it in a positive manner. We'll talk about some of the underrated performances, underrated stories that are told, underrated direction that these films took, all in an effort to prove that Rotten Tomatoes is indeed a flawed system, art is subjective, and also that you can be as over the moon or as cynical about anything as you want to be if you set your mind to it. Julio, that always goes to comprise the first half of our podcast, which we call Contrarians Corner. We always have a second half, though, where we bring home how we really feel about the movies we're discussing.
That is correct. The second half of the show, aptly titled Real Talk, is where we tell you how we really feel. And like Alex said, longtime listeners of the show must have heard us bring up Mad Max Fury Road time and again, usually with a shrug, as in like, we don't get it. Like, Fury Road is Little Sebastian, and we're Ben Wyatt, or like, we just don't get it. But that was
you got me
I
on
don't know
that
about
one.
you, Alex.
I almost choked on my beer on that one. That was good.
I hadn't watched Fury Road since it came out, so it is entirely possible that my feelings about it have changed, and maybe even yours. So when we get to Real Talk, we'll find out if our previous indifference to Fury Road remains or not, along with the real opinions of our guests. So stick around for that.
And with that being said, let's just go ahead and throw it over to them, Julio. We have a packed house, the biggest in Contrarians history, I believe, this evening. So who is joining us?
All right, so I'm going to throw it to them. I'm just going to say that we have one returning guest. If you listen to our Good Will Hunting episode, you already experienced his movie insight and enthusiasm, and he's brought along two of his co-hosts. So here we have David, Reese, and Irina from the Franchise Killer podcast. Hello, guys.
Hey
guys.
Ha.
Such enthusiasm. All right, I want you guys to introduce yourselves like you do on your show, where you're like, hey, this is whatever. And to my left there is, and in front of me there is.
I'm Reese. Across from me,
David.
and to his left,
Irina.
Oh my God, it's like being in an episode of Franchise Killer. It's very, very exciting.
Aren't you
All right.
giddy?
Yeah, I'm geeking out. All right, so one of you, or all three of you, tell our listeners what your show is about and what you guys do over there.
Oh, yeah, so we are Franchise Killer. We're a podcast that talks about movie franchises, whether they be one movie or multiple movies. It's pretty much any movie that had any designs on a sequel is fair game. So we have a lot of just one-offs that were just duds right from the start, and we have a lot of, longer franchises as well. The show is basically we go through the story and review it, and then ultimately kind of get into why this franchise failed, whether it be critical or box office or a mix of the two, or just waiting too damn long to come out with a new movie and just people losing interest completely. But yeah, that's basically the show. We're currently doing Robin Williams movies, which there's not too many Robin Williams franchises. Like, you got Jumanji, but he only stuck around for the first one, so we didn't really want to talk about it because... And Night at the Museum, where he's like kind of a character in it a little bit. But other than that, we're stuck with a whole bunch of one-offs. So if you don't like really long series, this is a good jumping on point. And of course, Robin Williams is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and we love a good handful of his films. So it's been kind of a love fest in that sense, except for
You.
except for me. Like,
I did hear you talk about. Well, actually, overall, Mrs. Doubtfire got a pretty rough treatment over there, Franchise Killer.
Well, a lot of people like it. I feel like I gutted it more than a lot of other people, but
Near and dear to my heart, at least.
that and Hook, I just don't understand the love for it. So for those, I was railing pretty hard on those movies.
As negative as you guys were on Hook, it made me want to rewatch it. So there's that. Now, I've seen you guys kind of play with the concept of your podcast, because, like you just said, like Robin Williams, I mean, it's not like Robin Williams is a franchise of himself, but then you can do Robin Williams movies, and you were doing Apes movies not too long ago. That's fun. I've enjoyed seeing like how you stretch the concept, but
We stretch it.
we are doing today a movie that we've kind of agreed on, and but it's not a franchise that you guys have touched on your show yet. Are there plans to do the Mad Max quadrilogy at some point?
We will most certainly get into Mad Max at some point. We're kind of like biding our time.
Well, actually, before Robin Williams was the series, this was my choice to do Robin Williams. I was this close to doing Mad Max and going for more of a post-apocalyptic sort of theme.
Can you describe to listeners how close, rather than putting your fingers up?
Oh yeah, like for the audience, I could see I'm doing just like an inch in the air. I mean, the only reason I didn't choose it was because Reese did the Ape series, and a lot of those kind of had a post-apocalyptic theme. So I was like, I want to steer away from that. I want to go with something kind of opposite of dramatic movies.
Yeah. I mean, that was I think mission accomplished, because Robin Williams has been a pretty whimsical run so far.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we've gotten introductions out of the way. Listeners, you're caught up on what Franchise Killer is. Alex, it's up to you now. I'm handing you the baton.
All right. Mad Max premiered on May 7th of 2015 at the TCL Chinese Theater. I thought that was the Kodak Theater. I don't know. Anyway, it was released wide on May 14th and had a budget between reported 155 million and 185 million. I'm always curious when they report numbers like that where that money is to have gone. I guess Tom Hardy just washed it for who was the studio that made this movie? Was it Lionsgate? Box office return of 375 million, and like I said, we'll talk about this in the second half, but this motherfucker lit the world on fire. Nominated for multiple Oscars, won multiple Oscars, and with a 97% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and just from its general legacy of millennials and people that I talk to, it's a big deal, Julio. So what were critics saying about it?
All right, so I got a handful of fresh quotes from the Rotten Tomatoes website. Got it to set the tone here. And Alex, once again, for the second time in less than a couple months, guess who I have here to open up the quote section but our friend Kip Mooney from College Movie Review.
My God.
You like that guy.
This is going to become like I don't know, a running segment at every episode, the Kip Mooney quote. He says, "It's hard to see another movie equaling this one's grand ambition, deep ideas, and awe-inspiring action." Now, listeners, you might remember that we quoted Kip Mooney on the Baby Driver episode, and Alex saw their friendship be strained when he disagreed with him. Alex, what do you think? Kip Mooney, yay or nay here?
He's entitled to have his opinion.
All right, next, Kanish Dvagan from Film Companion says, "You'll have to watch it to see how it took us to new heights of energetic, ambitious, emotionally resonant, intelligent, exhilarating, and political filmmaking." Political
else bored?
filmmaking. I don't know. Irina, Reese, do you sense a political message in this movie?
No, I would love for them to just unpack that statement. I feel like it's too easy for them to just put in a really quick quote and sound intelligent with it without backing it up.
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling that if you ask them, but what political statement, they'll be like, "Oh, you don't get it, man." And then just walk away.
Can't explain it.
Kate Young from Batty Mamzelle says, "In Mad Max Fury Road, the strong female characters are notable specifically for their aversion to violence." What movie did she watch? There's a bunch of women killing other people in this movie. There's no aversion to violence. Did I miss something?
I'm pretty sure a lot of them even make the point that violence was necessary given their environment. I'm pretty sure that's what that band of women near the end were talking about.
Literally came in to kill people.
Yeah.
There's that shot of that woman shooting another dude in the face with a shotgun at like point blank range. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
All right, and we're going to close with Charlie Jane Anders from io9.com, who says, "This is one of the few movies I've ever seen where the whole audience broke into spontaneous, loud applause a third of the way in." What happens a third of the way in that would make the audience applaud? Do you guys have any idea?
That sandstorm sequence? Was that a third of the way in or a little further in?
The fuse.
Yeah, the dying of the flare, I guess.
After the
yeah.
sandstorm. I was impressed. I mean, I hate this movie, but I was impressed.
Yeah, I would guess that maybe they just started applauding when Tom Hardy kind of like got up from the sand. They're like, he's finally free. He's finally gonna take over the movie.
One of my favorite working as a projectionist, kind of like human studies, people watching, was the end of Observe and Report, where Seth Rogen takes a real gun and shoots that guy at point blank range. There would be theaters where people would start applauding from laughter, and then other theaters where like people would just recoil in horror.
Yeah.
It was always fascinating to watch. I'm trying to think of something that I like reacted to in that manner. I know when Ryan Gosling stomped that dude's head in Drive, I was like, yeah! So, closest thing that comes to mind.
So similar thing
Everybody
that happened
around you in the theater just spread out.
Yeah.
All right, Alex. Well, those were my quotes. You can drive us into the story.
Yeah, and for longtime listeners, returning listeners, or new listeners, all the same, just to kind of give a little preamble here. A little bit different. I'm just going to be guiding this along. I'm going to be your captain. I guess Tom Hardy's not the captain of this.
No, you got to be Charlize Theron.
Is it Feroja? Is that her name?
Furiosa.
Furiosa.
Fuchsia.
Okay.
Fuchsia.
That's a cool color.
I'll be behind the wheel, the kind of navigating the plot. To be completely frank, it's not like this is a very plot. We're not dealing with Inception here. So be moving this along, leaving plenty of room for our guests. And of course, Julio. The first thing I took note of was the studio signatures looked kind of like when you would see Saw or something, when they would customize, the Warner Brothers logo to make it with the theme of the movie. Typically something you usually see with either comic book movies or horror movies. That's the kind of stuff I take note of. My second note was, why isn't Tom Hardy just talking like himself?
Dude has like one of the sexiest voices in the world.
And they're trying to just mute him here. Which, of course, I guess as good a time as any to jump into this. Do you think Tom Hardy is the lead in this movie? Do you think he is the star, or is Charlize Theron the lead?
That's one of the main problems with this movie. I feel like it kind of has an identity crisis with that. It's called Mad Max Fury Road. We open on Mad Max. He has his visions, and it's centered around Mad Max. Yet Furiosa is drawing your eye throughout the whole movie, and I don't give any shits about Mad Max in this movie.
It feels like it transitions at one point. I mean, obviously he is front and center until they get to the big rig, right? I mean, once they start chasing her, the movie becomes about her, in my opinion.
Yeah,
he's just like there as like the casual observer as he rides on the car to follow.
But if
Casual.
gun to head, you ask me who the main character in this is, I say Max. Even though he is kind of a nothing burger.
He'll put a gun to your head, all right.
But in just the way the film is written, he's the main character just because you follow him throughout the whole story, and people impress on him throughout it. And he just happens to be lucky to be on this ride with Furiosa.
I was gonna say he seems like he's just kind of a bystander to everything that's happening. Like, he does take control of situations, but it's like he is just on the outskirts of Furiosa's story.
Yes, he's orbiting.
Well, I'm curious how Arena feels about this, because I had this thought as I was watching the movie for the second time, and it feels like George Miller baked in a Furiosa movie inside a Mad Max movie, which to me, even though that is, people praise him for that, but really, the really courageous thing would have been to just make a Furiosa movie. But instead, he kind of like bookended it with Mad Max, and it feels just a little condescending, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, do you feel like he's a little bit like talking down to you as a woman? And it's like, look, I'm not going to give you a female Mad Max, but I'm going to give you a main female character in a Mad Max movie. I'm not going to give you Black Widow on her own movie. I'm going to put Black Widow in the Avengers, so to
Right,
speak.
Exactly. I think there's this trend that I see in a lot of movies, especially action films or things that have had kind of this long standing already, where they keep passing the baton to a female member, like you see it with the Ghostbusters, you see it in Star Wars, where it's just kind of like making this grand show of, hey, look, the men are stepping down and we're going to let a woman lead now, kind of a thing. So it's just kind of, it feels sort of self-indulgent at times, where they're like, I know this is what our audience wants to see, So I don't find it the biggest offender, but it's definitely something in my mind as I'm watching it that I'm hyper aware of.
Yeah, I think especially once we get closer to the end of the movie, and really for all the build-up that they've given Furiosa at the end, it's Max who has the key, who makes the key decisions in the plot, which it's like, what? So you were just sitting back the entire time, and then finally decided to take control of the story at the end because it is a Mad Max movie. I felt kind of cheated, and I felt like, especially on rewatch, this was a little more noticeable. Alex, you posed a question, but you haven't answered. How do you feel about this?
Well, Tom Hardy is the most important part of any movie he's in. Let's just get that out of the way. Yeah, I don't know. I remember that I saw this movie only having heard things, and you know how disconnected I've been from modern film for the better part of the last decade. So when I saw this, I knew Charlize Theron was in it. I didn't realize she was as big a part of it as she was. And of course, like Tom Hardy, He's a charismatic dynamo and a great deliverer of dialogue, and so naturally he has extremely limited dialogue in this. And for that, we don't really he goes through nothing really in this movie, whereas she has an entire arc. She has a backstory that's kind of fleshed out, a middle, and you think an end, but she makes it to, and is presumably the queen of, Alabama or wherever the fuck they are. And so I definitely side with her. More, what's better about her character is you actually understand and things are explained, unlike Max and these constant flashbacks he has starting in the first 5 minutes of the movie until almost the literal end of the movie that are never fully explained. I guess he had a kid or something. I'm sorry, was this in the graphic novel and I didn't read it?
I was wondering the same freaking thing. I was like, is this a reference to an older Mad Max that I didn't see? Because that would be cool. But otherwise, I had no idea what was going on.
That kid is in the graphic novel. Yeah.
Okay, so you had to read it to believe it.
It's it's on the webisodes.
Part of the video game.
Yes. Yeah. I kept waiting for that payoff of this is what the flashbacks mean, and then we never got it. So I wonder if there is a 3-hour-long Fury Road cut that just fills in those holes.
Fun fact, there is actually something like 470 hours of footage of this film that had to be cut down, and it took months to get through. So there is probably something else to do with
a
that.
full movie in there.
How much of it is just Nicholas Hoult driving and screaming?
Oh, all of it.
It's just him singing entire songs.
So the movie starts off, we're building this land, this vast, post-apocalyptic world, this desert. Tom Hardy has long hair to begin with it, which is cool, but he's immediately kidnapped by these Trump voters, and he's taken in, his head shaved. I guess in the future, your back, you're tattooed. There's basically your identification, because it does say on his back, universal donor, and they call that out at one point in time. I was kind of hoping his back was going to be the map to dry land, but it was not to be. The opening is basically him getting captured, then trying to escape unsuccessfully. What's the bad guy's name in this?
Immortan Joe.
Immortan Joe. Hugh Case Byrne played this gentleman. And I have in my notes, this is 1000% how Trump saw his presidency. This dude, getting ready to go speak to the masses and, just views them all as so much lesser than. And it's a lot of building, and we get the impression this dude is large and in charge and addresses people maybe daily. And then the gift he brings them is mother's milk, which is literally, he's just got a factory of women being milked. So how did this dude rise to power? I mean, he's got some big henchmen alongside him, but he's clearly an old dude.
Yeah.
Who's very, very weak, Howard Hughes style. There's urine in jars somewhere along there, but this dude's in charge, and he's presumably generations of people he's manipulated into following his way only with the promise of milk. He's not even offering steak or anything. So we're 10 minutes into this, and I'm already just how did this happen? And again, I didn't read the graphic novel, so who knows?
He's probably a great public speaker.
Yeah, I think it's just a family line thing. It seems family line. It does seem like they're all related. Even the other towns are somehow connected.
Well, yeah, they talk about each other like brother or something.
I'm just what an effed up family.
I do think that's one of the issues as far as believability is that so Max is how old now, and he's supposed to have seen, based on the previous films, he's supposed to have seen basically the decay of society up to this point. How were they able to develop over that short amount of time with so few resources to this point? That's my question.
I see the Mel Gibson movies as the Sean Connery Bonds, and this is the turning the page over to, who was the next one? Dalton? Or was it? No, it was Roger Moore.
Yeah.
This is Roger Moore, reset.
Yep. Not necessarily connected, but they have the same lineage.
Yeah.
I honestly, to answer your question, I feel like maybe this family way down the line before it got too bad was they're like the Rockefellers, and they just were stocking up on all the resources, and so they provided it to the masses.
Yeah.
They just happen to have a ridiculously insane family member who.
But I think that there's this aspect they keep trying to play with of this kind of inbreeding issue that they have, where they're trying to basically produce a perfect human from his line, but he and his brothers all have obvious maladies. So, and that only develops over like years, like generations.
Well, you got to keep it in the family, right? Like, I mean, that's just how you do it.
Yeah, but it's just going back to the point, like, how did they get into power in the first place? Like, who were they? Like,
yeah, was society so broken by the time that this movie took place that people just couldn't even join forces to overthrow this guy who is not really that impressive? I mean, I don't know, it boggles the mind. It's, as far as the main antagonist in this movie, it was kind of unimpressive because it's just it's a generic design, and it's not even like he is particularly enchanting. It's just mostly on the visual aspect that he'll grab you. But then after that, he's not a great, like, a mastermind of strategy or anything. You know, all he does is just get in a car and chase after his bride and back.
Honestly, can you blame him though? At that point, he's going down. No one else in his family's taken over. Like, I feel like that baby that he's going after is like the last chance that he could have somebody run that system for him afterward.
Yeah, we live in presumably in this, a post-Woodstock 99 world. That's kind of the vibes I got with the water, how they just kind of like aimed a garden hose at 250,000 people. They're like, here you go, cool down.
I'm just wondering, like, and this is cutting to the end real quick, but there's so many opportunities these people have to just jump on that lift, and the reason that they finally do at the end is just like, so why? Like, I don't know.
No shit.
This would be such an easy government to overthrow. Yes, there would be casualties, but there's a whole lot more of them than there are of the people in charge. So,
well, there's literally a moment here, like towards the beginning, when he finds out, you know, that his brides are gone. There's this old lady, I guess she's the maid or something. She has a rifle pointed at him. She could have ended the movie right there, but instead she decides to give him a speech, and then he takes the gun from her. So this would be, again, much more.
She like points it at him, and then she doesn't fire it until he takes it and points it up. It's like you had at least 15 seconds to pull the trigger.
She practiced that speech for so long. Damn it, she was getting it out regardless. She wasn't gonna let him die before she got those words out.
Yeah.
Of course, I can bring some pro wrestling trivia to this. Rictus Erectus, the giant bald man that is presumably the son of Immortan Joe, that's always by his side throughout the movie, and you know he's got that weird breathing apparatus on his face. Y'all know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He was known as the Colossus of Bago Road. His name is Nathan Jones. He was in the WWF for a cup of coffee. He did like serious time in Australian prison.
Oh,
I can't remember exactly for what.
I know he claims it was a crime that he didn't commit, but he did some time there. And his legacy in wrestling was that he was so bad that he was supposed to be in a tag team match at WrestleMania 19. He was going to team up with The Undertaker to take on the Big Show and A-Train. And The Undertaker at the last minute said, I'm not going out at WrestleMania with that guy because he's going to embarrass us. That's how bad this guy was. So they had to do like an angle before the show that he got jumped backstage and taken out of the match. So basically, he ran in to do one move at the end of the match, and he still fucked that up. So that is his legacy in the world of professional wrestling.
It makes a lot of sense now because he's holding an engine block at the end of this movie for upwards of.
He looks like $1 million, and back in those days, it was before they cut down on steroids, so he was just like herking and jerking on camera all the time. It was good stuff. But there you go. Learn y'all something about this guy here.
Yeah, that's cool to know.
Charlize Theron, Furiosa leads the, I guess not really, it's not a revolt because it's really well orchestrated. They're basically going to go on a really remedial run, but she goes her own path. She goes off path. And as soon as Immortan Joe from his little telescope, sees what's going on, it's hilarious because he kind of puts the pieces together in his head and he's like, oh God, the wenches, where are they? And he runs back into his fortress where he keeps all these women that he basically holds prisoner for breeding purposes. And this is what we talked about, the woman who says, you know, you don't own them, you don't control them. So they have sprung an escape, and a very well orchestrated one at that. But Immortan Joe sends his whole militia, his army, out after them, and you know they would not succeed in covert warfare. My note says, "Hell yeah, drum line." I'm just reading on my notes here. They literally have a drum line on the back of one of their war vehicles that they take with them, and then they got the guy who's got the double guitar that
The
they can axe as
doof-warrior.
well. Yes. So just completely conspicuous and blatant, showing up with their attempts, going after Furiosa and the breeders. And the way, of course, Max plays into all this is he's been taken hostage. He's placed at the front of a vehicle, and he's used as a literal blood bag. Is it Nicholas Holt that he's hooked to?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a note here that says LOL Nicholas Holt. Remember when that guy was a thing? I guess Eddie Redmayne had to, you know, wash his hair that day, so they couldn't cast him in this role, so they got Nicholas Holt to be Nux. And
Too busy
This
yelling
is kind-
extremely loudly in Jupiter Ascending.
this is what brings them all together, and it is our first of many chase scenes in a lot of ways, with the exception of the first 10 minutes and last 10 minutes of this movie. It's just one elongated chase scene. But this is what brings all our characters together. The women escape successfully with Furiosa's lead, but during the process is where we learn the devotion that these minions have to Immortan Joe, with their willingness to just, you know, kamikaze style, give their life for it. And I guess the best they've been promised is they can just huff paint before they die, and at least they'll ride out on a good high. It just gives you no time to catch your breath. I mean, we're still in the first goddamn 40 minutes of this movie, and it's just constant chaos and things. It's unsettling. You can't catch your breath. There's no time to reflect and be like, oh, Charlize Theron, she was in reindeer games. It's too much.
Well, you do get just a moment to realize that they appropriated Viking culture. I mean, your brain goes, wait a second. Wait, we're talking about Valhalla here in this world? This is where, okay, all right, well, and we're moving on. All right.
I'm just surprised at this point that our main line of dialogue from our boy Tom Hardy has been a series of grunts. Even though he doesn't have anything in his mouth, he has a mask, but that's not impeding your speech in any way. I mean, you can shout words.
It's a personal
still.
choice, man.
But he just decides, like, no, I'm going to act like I have a sock in my mouth this whole time. Like,
Well, the worst part is that he's talking to himself. Like, he's never engaging conversations with anybody else. This is, I mean, it's kind of a through line through the movie, and it reminded me a little bit of the M. Night Shyamalan movies that we did a couple months ago, where in the middle of a very tense situation, these big set pieces, suddenly we had these weird attempts at humor. Here, because Max, keep calling him Matt. So Max is kind of propped in front of the vehicle that they're driving, and the guy that's in charge of the guns, he shoots and barely misses his head because he's aiming at the rig.
Mm-hmm.
And then Max kind of turns, not even fully addressing the guy that almost shot him, but kind of turns to the side, almost like he's telling us, and he goes like, "That was my head." It was like, who is he talking to? Why is he saying this? This is an action movie, and he's almost making it like a comedy. It's weird because I haven't. I've seen a handful of other George Miller movies where the comedy was more in tune with the story. He did the second Babe movie, and that was like a perfect blend of drama and comedy.
weird movie.
He did Happy Feet.
1 and 2.
He's had such
Yeah.
a strange career. My God.
Well, in the 21st century, there's only been 3 movies or 2 movies before this, and both of them were an animated kids movie. And then they're like, "Hey, get this guy on the newest Mad Max."
Yeah. Now, as far as Nicholas Holt, he can't really carry a movie, at least so far. I don't think that he has. I think that he still has this sort of image, whatever it may be, that he was trying to upend with his performance in Mad Max. Because when I was watching it, I was like, this is a guy that's trying way too hard to not be seen as whatever he's being seen in Hollywood right now. It was like, I want to shatter the image of Nicholas Holt that is in the mind of producers and agents and casting directors. And he put it all out there and credit to him for doing that, but it just doesn't work because when I see it, I don't see a character. I just see an actor trying really hard to impress me with his bold choices. And, you know, he shaved his head and he's screaming all the time and he wants to die, but he wants to live and he's in love and then he dies.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. I know he's supposed to be the heart of the movie when it comes down to it, but when the heart of the movie feels so artificial, then it just... the message falls flat.
Well, that's when you feel the length of this movie. It's too short to support this arc, because one second he's willing to die for Immortan Joe, like he's literally going way out of his way to, like, he's willing to die defending
multiple times.
His master, and then suddenly it's
belief.
Like suddenly he flips a switch and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna stay with these guys.
I'm gonna help them.
It's way too abrupt. You need
he had some pretty ladies there to convince him after he didn't get to die 3 times.
Well, I think the idea is that these kids are close to death and they're basically brainwashed into this belief system. So it's gonna take a lot longer than like a woman caressing his face to deconstruct that religion.
I'm just gonna say though that the most touching moment to me in this movie was him going, "Oh, these are my mates," and he points to the 2 tumors on his shoulder.
Hey, maybe that's it. She's the first one to find those little guys endearing.
Yeah, I mean that was, oh man, that made me kind of like cringe, but also I don't know, it was endearing in a really weird way.
So the initial chase hits an impasse where it looks like these electrical storms kind of swoop in every night. Again, this movie does not do a lot to explain to you the situation you're in, which in some cases I really like. I really like being just dropped into a situation. It's like, well, you got to figure it out or get left behind. So they drive into this electrical storm, and this is where everyone is kind of brought together. And like my note here says, Max is now with the girls. That took 45 minutes. So he's with, they become a team, not before all fighting. Even Nicholas Hoult, is kind of in on the fray there. Or no, he's eventually that, because I have in my notes when they start driving away and he's like on the, the back bumper with his chain, like trying to fuck with the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Charlize Theron or Max, one of them says, "We're dragging something." And I said out loud, yeah, well, that's a metaphor for Nicholas Hoult in films in general. So this is how the whole crew's pulled together. The Breeders, Furiosa, Max. We find the mission here is that these women were trying to escape. They don't know Max, but obviously he's trying to get the fuck out of there as well. And Nux now, he's basically like a prisoner of theirs right now. He eventually realizes the error of his ways when he has kind of his come to Jesus moment with Immortan Joe. But the women want to escape. They want to retreat to the green place, dry land. It's a tale we've seen numerous times before. So they are just heading north, west, south, whichever direction they're going. And trying to find this utopia where they can live and be free. Their first stop along the way, they're confronted by some Tusken Raiders, and it leads to another chase scene. Julio, I know you're a gamer, a casual gamer like myself. A game that I kind of enjoyed that was criticized for being repetitive, and I can admit to it, was the Watchmen game that they came out with 12 years ago to coincide with the release of the film. The End is Nigh. It was basically just Streets of Rage with Rorschach and Night Owl. Yeah, but this movie feels like an old school side-scrolling arcade game that you spend, $16 in quarters to beat, but you just do the same shit over and over again, like Final Fight. You're just kind of marching along, and then eventually comes along a new character that kind of says something or tilts their head up and laughs menacingly, and then you just button mash some more. And that's what happens here. We think something's going to happen with these Tusken Raiders or these, land pirates or whatever the fuck you want to call them, but it just leads to another chase scene, and it's rinse and repeat. But
on BMX bikes this time.
Well, it's like the bosses at the end of the later levels. They're just the old bosses, but with new colors. Like they have new clothes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's all the same. I get you. I think especially when you've seen the movie once already and you know that this is what you're in for. There is nothing but driving until you hit a certain point and then turning around and heading back. It just feels, it's just grueling. And there is not, I wish the movie was more self-aware, because I was having more fun just kind of making fun of the movie as I was writing notes. There's a moment before they all get in the van, in the rig, and take off, when Max first comes upon all the brides and Furiosa. He's just he's dragging that chain, he's carrying Nux, he's covered in sand. He turns the corner around the rig and he literally walks into a wet t-shirt concert. Like, the girls are there and they're just like hosing down their clothes, and he looks at them, and I'm like, this is the perfect moment where if this movie was a send-up of the Mad Max franchise, like, this would be killer. But because it's actually supposed to be a serious action movie, it's just weird. Like, I find it funny, but it's not meant to be funny. And there are so many instances throughout the movie where he could just subvert our expectations if everything wasn't so epic. If his main objective wasn't to wow us with the visuals, but instead to just kind of point out how ridiculous everything is. And yeah, the Tusken Raiders are part of it. It's really weird because they don't have any sort of relationship. Furiosa and Max don't trust each other, and I get that, right? She has every right to distrust him, and he is also distrustful of everybody else. But then when they get to Tusken Raider, I guess, save point, she suddenly tells him, hey, you know what? This is a secret code to get the rig going. And if anything happens to me, just take care of the bride. Suddenly, she decides to trust him with everything that she's been protecting so fiercely through the first, 50 minutes of the movie. Much like with Nux, I just didn't feel that transition was earned. Like, all of a sudden, there was this turn, and now she decides that she can trust him.
When I yell fool, you drive out of here as fast as you can. This is the sequence. 1, 1, 2, 1. Red, black, go. You have it?
Tell me about the brides. What are you thinking about the brides? Because I by now we're closing into the halfway point in the movie, and this is supposed to be one of the most valuable elements in the movie. This is why everything is happening, because Furiosa has the brides, Immortan Joe wants the brides. What do you make of the brides at this point?
I think one of the biggest things that I noticed especially when I first saw this, was I felt like a lot of them were really wooden in my mind. Like, they're given some personality traits. I would put that in quotes. One of them's
pregnant.
Yeah, one's pregnant. You always recognize her.
One of them's
Another
Zoe
one is
Kravitz.
wearing like goggles,
one of them was in a Transformers movie. The third one.
No, but they're and I can see where they're trying to go with that, but it's almost like they kind of go back and forth between, oh, the brides are kind of like their own action heroes, but then also very delicate and fragile, and all kind of sharing the same personality at times. So it's I can't decide whether they're supposed to be more symbolic or actual people. So I think that was the issue I was having with their inclusion.
It's also like, are we just saving the pretty ones? I mean, we had the milk mothers there too. They just get to stay hooked up to the...
I couldn't even tell you how many brides there are. Like, I would have to sit down and kind of figure out what little I remember of each of them to finally tell you. Because I know Zoe Kravitz, Riley Keough, and there might be 2 others. But I don't know if it's 4 or 5 out there.
There's the black-haired one that wants to go back. Like, yeah, I always had this one moment in the movie that
she
I'm like,
was the most forgettable one for me.
Yeah,
and the rest kind of had more screen time, I suppose. But
the breeder that is pregnant, by the looks of it, maybe 5 or 6 months pregnant, is unfortunately a casualty of this getaway scene. She is knocked overboard on the freighter, or whatever you want to call it. It's basically like a Star Destroyer that's on wheels, and falls down and then gets not completely ran over, but trampled by Immortan Joe's convoy.
This is probably one of the few movies we get to see a pregnant woman go under the wheel of a car. So that's memorable.
You had one job: hold on to the truck, and you
almost did it.
She slipped on her own blood.
Slipped on her own candy trail.
Yeah.
Eventually, sadly, dies and loses the baby as well. A guy's just there with a hunting knife and cuts her open. Fortunately, this movie shows some restraint, and it's not one of those things where they get off on showing, it's not Rob Zombie wanting to show all the gore that he can. But this clearly infuriates Immortan Joe to find them and seek his vengeance. Another wrestling note, the fiery redhead of the breeders, I didn't catch who that was. One of the more popular female wrestlers of the last 5 or 6 years, Becky Lynch fashioned her look after that character like directly for 2 or 3 years. Even had the steampunk goggles and everything. But the movie's blue now, so it went from like a kind of sepia to a dark orange to blue, which leads to my question about, I don't know, have any of y'all seen the black and white version of this?
No, I've been so tempted to watch it, but I always just, like, when I'm hovering over the, like, oh, I'm going to watch the black, I always revert back to the original. I don't know why. Like, I'm just like, I get it. You wanted to do this in black and white, whatever. I can imagine how that looks. Not interested. And I go to
Whenever I'm hovering over hit and play on the black and white version, I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna watch a good movie instead, and I just pick something. But that is a trend, right? Because you watched Logan in black and white, Alex, and you liked it. So do you think that black and white Fury Road would change your mind about it?
Logan doesn't completely exist on an idea of like the color on screen setting like the literal act of the film.
Yeah.
You know,
It's with this movie, first of all, as if, you know, making a black and white cut of your film isn't pretentious enough, after the fact you released it in color. This motherfucker, the Mad Max Fury Road black and white, it's called Black and Chrome Edition. So fuck off with that.
Hell yeah.
yes.
And I do like Logan Noir. I saw Logan Noir in theater. I thought that was really cool. And yeah, all it is it's Logan, but in black and white.
But
I didn't
feel
realize
like
that screened in theaters, the black and white version. That's awesome.
Yeah, they did a one-night screening of it. And I went to the Draft House at RIP, the one down on 6th Street, the Ritz location, and saw it. It was really cool. With that, though, James Mangold had said that at one point, like he even like approached, can we release this in black and white? And they said, get out of our office. No, fuck you. This is a Marvel movie. We're milking this for all it's worth. With this, I don't know. Maybe George Miller thought about it being black and white, but me watching it, especially this go around, I was like, what could possibly be gained from watching this? Because so much of this movie exists to be colorful. And so this particularly the setting at night when it was blue, I just didn't really get what the significance of seeing it in black and white would have been.
Yeah, what's extra baffling about it is George Miller was very intentional with the use of color in this movie to distinguish this film from other post-apocalyptic films that are very unsaturated. But early on, he was like, oh, we should do this in black and white. I'm like, that's what? Like that? That's two very conflicting...
It basically goes against exactly what he was standing on for the original.
Yeah, so he like really pivoted all the way over to the other side. So I don't know what provoked that decision, but cool. I mean...
I think that the bigger problem is that regardless of color, this is just desert. Everywhere you go, wherever the story takes him, is just sand dunes and little mountains, and every now and then, you know, a little patch of grass. There's a swamp at one point, and then there's a citadel. It's just boring. If I'm gonna sit for 2 hours watching a high-speed chase, then do what Jade did and just set it in a busy, populated, civilized environment. Here, it was like there's no innocent bystanders that they can run over. It's just a free-for-all. They can just keep speeding forward. So that's on top of everything. The environment that's surrounding them is not that interesting.
There's one little nitpick I have with the darker scene that you're referencing, Alex. This scene was shot in pure daylight, and it was just adjusted afterwards. And
Interesting.
Charlize Theron does a really good job of looking perfectly like it's nighttime, but you go to Tom Hardy, he's squinting his eyes the whole time, and maybe that's just to see. Maybe that's to see better in the dark. You do that in the dark too, so maybe I should like reel that back. But I'm just like, it's so obvious you're like squinting because the sun's like in your eyes or something. Like, but yeah, just a little nitpick.
Tom Hardy just squints. That's just that's part of his character trait in this movie.
Yeah,
It's true. He's squinting for like 75% of the movie Warrior. Like anywhere he looks, he's just squinting. They pull up to a nude woman who's on top of, she's like in a cage on top of a pole, and he knows, he's like, that's bait, but Charlize Theron knows where they are. She goes out and does a walla walla hoo call or something, and then I'm not a woman. I don't know what it's like to have a female body, but I do know what it's like to be naked, and the idea of sliding down a rope while naked does not seem appealing. And this woman just completely guns it down this rope, completely nude, and then runs over as if she's so happy to see Charlize Theron. And possibly the most unrealistic part of the movie.
She must have some pretty thick calluses. Well, that's all I gotta say.
What, thigh calluses? Is that a thing?
I suppose so. Maybe in this world. But David and I were watching that part, and we both just cringed watching it. We're like, oh, no. I'm pretty sure he said something similar. He's like, I'm not a woman, but that looks incredibly uncomfortable.
I'm also pretty sure, since this seems like a pretty a desperate time for everyone, you probably wouldn't need to be completely unclothed to tempt someone into your area.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll just.
Who knows? Maybe they assume that, like, everyone out there assumes someone's hiding a weapon, I suppose.
Maybe.
And so they're like, hey, look, I'm completely nude. No weapons on me.
For as allegedly progressive as this film is, George Miller still had to get a nude woman in there, you know?
Also, is this where they ran out of a budget and didn't show actually where they live at all? Like, did they just like pop out of the ground? Like, there's no village.
And it's not even hilly; it's just flat land, and you see nothing.
They're just where'd they come from? Like, we passed through this bog or this quagmire, as they call it, and I guess that's their water source ?
Well,
And then
the thing was, they said, oh, that used to be the green place, but you know, the crows are there and everything, and it was like, so living in the sandy dunes was better.
Well, it's really weird because maybe I'm wrong. I got the feeling that in movie time, they've only been on the road for a day. So you're telling me that the green place, this mythical place that they were off to find, was literally a day's drive from the Citadel? How has no one ever run into it before?
Yeah, it has only been a day. You're right, or at least one night cycle. And then,
as far as we've seen, there's really no clear timeline here, but I'm assuming it must be that amount of time because nobody freaking eats or drinks really that much. So
maybe since gas is so precious, they're like, don't go there or anywhere. I don't know.
It just feels like it was too easy to find. If you told me that they drive for, I don't know, a month and they finally get there, they cross state lines, they finally get out of Texas and they make it to where they think the green place is and it's gone, that would have had a bigger impact. But instead, it was the complete opposite. It feels like they just went around the corner and they found out that the green place was not there anymore. And yeah, you're right. We don't even see what has replaced the green place. They're just living out there, camping.
They just eat sand now. I
guess.
They've adapted to it.
I suppose.
Well, that lady was growing some nice little plants and little skulls in her purse.
She had seeds.
No. Remember that little skull that she was growing an apple tree? So, you know, that eventually will be very fruitful.
Meanwhile, she's saying all the soil is sour. And I'm like, well, then where did you get that one? Like, where was that from? Seems like it's growing fine.
Julio, I was waiting for you to call it out, but this is the scene where she gets there and it's not, you know, the green place anymore.
Oh,
it's
God,
just a vapid wasteland, and we get Charlize Theron's "I have no shame" moment.
Oh, I was gonna call it that's a much better one. I wrote down, or I was going to write down the Mickey, I'm coming to kill you moment, and then I stopped myself because I realized how often I use the joke, and I'm like, nope, retiring it. From now on, I'm just gonna stay quiet whenever somebody falls to their knees and screams to the skies. But yeah, the "I have no shame" moment, that's not as overused. So I can let's edit this together. So then Charlize Theron falls to her knees and she
has her "I have no shame" moment.
Yeah, it's overwrought. I don't need to see it. All kidding aside, we don't need to see characters falling to their knees and screaming to the heavens ever again in movies. Let's give it a rest for at least a couple decades.
Okay, what would have made it work, though, is if, like, it just stayed on her and then she got up and just walked back to everyone just staring at her.
Yeah.
I do love how in movies they always, like, kind of cut from that point. I always wonder, like, so what happens after this very dramatic moment? Is there just a really awkward silence when you walk back to the other people? Or, like, what conversation ensues there? What do you do with your hands? You know, it's just kind of like a nobody ever thinks to show that.
who speaks to her? Who speaks to Furiosa first?
Yeah.
Who comes over and it's like,
Or when she
so-
turns around, do they all like turn around and backs to her? Like, I don't know, I didn't see anything. I'm just looking at the sand over here.
We needed one of the breeders to be really fucking catty. Like, really green over here. Look at all that fresh water.
That's the thing, because she takes it really badly, understandably so, Furiosa. But everybody else is just kind of, they're fine by next scene. Even Furiosa, she seems like she got it together. By next scene, she has a new plan. We're just going to get on our bikes and ride until we run out of gasoline.
Yeah, that's where you get the great line from Tom Hardy that hope is a mistake.
I don't know. It feels like it was such a big emotional turn, and yet it doesn't really have that much of an impact. Her entire dream has been destroyed. There's no paradise. And not just that, but all these girls that she's dragged along in this adventure, they just realize that there is no God, and yet they're fine. Once again, if we're talking about a longer cut, then this is something that should have been explored more.
I mean, still beats getting humped by a Morton Joe.
I would have to agree with that.
I mean, what it's like that. Those are your two alternatives: stay at home and get, I guess, raped by a Morton Joe until you can bear his offspring, or go die in the desert. That's like, I don't know. It's two very tempting options.
I would have liked to hear one of the brides verbalize that, though. That would have made just Charlize Theron's on her knees crying, and then I don't know, Zoe Kravitz comes over and goes like, "Hey, it's worse back there."
Yeah. But hey, let's go back to where we started.
Yes, that's the plan. It's like, if we just keep riding, we can ride for 160 days, and then Tom Hardy prepares this spiel about let's just go back here. And I guess the idea is if they go back, it'll be unguarded, and they can cut him off at the pass, and then they can take control of the mother's milk and the water and the whatever vegetation is left there, and the mouth breathers there that are just willing to follow them and just desperate to follow a good public speaker.
I think one of my favorite moments of just kind of like this, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I laughed so hard, was when they're passing by Immortan Joe and his posse, and Immortan Joe and everyone, they're straight up just like taking a siesta midday and singing a song. And then meanwhile, Furiosa and Mad Max are just like running by, kind of like with little cartoon puffs of dust behind them. They're like, hey, wait a minute. They're going back to the Citadel.
Oh, yeah. And the fucking Churchill guy with his nips out has like his feet are like that scene in The Nutty Professor where the potion wears off and Sherman starts becoming Sherman again, and like all the fat rushes to his feet. That it's like so many just innocuous visuals in this movie are distressing and off-putting.
Yep.
I look back to the whole going back to town. It just makes me think of that meme where it's like, step 1, go back to where we came. Step 2, take over the city. Step 3,
Profit.
Step 4, profit. It's like, sure. Yeah, that's as simple as that.
That's how it works.
Yeah, but before they go back to the city, they share one of my favorite parts in this, just from a guy who loves 80s action movies. They do the "you son of a bitch" handshake, where they, slap each other's hands. It's like that meme, of the two hands together and the unity. What it would have worked, though, is if he went after her, like, prosthetic hand.
And she leaves him hanging for a while there, too.
Yep.
He's like,
Yeah.
hey, come on.
You son of a bitch. I'm in.
But it's really, this is the moment where the movie kind of transfers. It just gives Max the power once again. And like you were saying, Alex, for a movie that is hailed as being so progressive and whatever, this is a moment where Mad Max has to come over to Furiosa and kind of mansplain what the real goal is. And he's like, if you want redemption, then you have to do things my way, not your really dumb way of like riding out there and dying when you run out of gas. Instead, I, the man, I'm going to tell you what really needs to be done so that you can achieve peace of mind. And then it happens. It would have been great if the movie ended up proving Max wrong. Like, they go back and everybody dies, and then he has to carry that. And then he's sort of like, see?
He can blame it on his, I guess, daughter who told him to do it. His vision daughter.
His ghost daughter.
His PTSD ghost daughter.
That we never ever meet. Yeah, she's the one who apparently told him to go back, even though I didn't really hear her say that, but...
She waved with her hand.
Yeah, she's like, come on, Max. And we're like, is she going back to the Citadel? Is that where she's going? All right.
And not only is this the mansplaining moment, but it's also the moment where Max finally has more than one sentence to say. And what we're like 65 minutes or 70, 80 minutes into the movie, I don't know. And you realize why he only has more, like he only grunts throughout the whole movie. Because this guy, like, what is this accent? Like, I can't tell what he's going for here, because like
thirsty, that's his accent.
Yeah, he wavers between just grunting and kind of sounding Australian to not sounding Australian at all, to like just being Tom Hardy doing a gruff voice. Like
I like to imagine that he was trying to come up with this accent. He's like, okay, if I was this crazed dude surviving in the desert and I guess I'd have to drink my own piss or something, and I'd be parched and just burns your throat, and then I guess the sand and gravel gets in there, and then I just kind of get angry and then I go back to I don't know. It becomes method at this point.
That's why all his dialogue was cut from the movie. It's out there somewhere, but they just left the grunts.
So we get another chase scene.
Hey, this is a race scene. The first one is a chase. It's different.
Race to the finish.
Touche. We get the race scene as opposed to the two chase scenes that led us to this moment. This is where Charlize Furiosa gets the worst of it, though. She does get stabbed by one of the crazy minions that gets through, and because she's trying to save Max, right? She's trying to pull him. She's trying to keep him from dying, and so leaves herself open and gets stabbed in the side. It's bad business. But she realizes her destiny, I guess, is kind of built to this moment, because she ends up killing Immortan Joe, and holy shit, I forgot how bad this dude gets it in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about the movie restraining itself from showing some acts of violence. This one, they didn't. This dude gets his fucking face ripped off.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Via jaw.
Face mask and all.
But weren't you disappointed that he didn't put up more of a fight? This big,
he's
massive
an old
enemy.
fucker,
Does he
dude.
look like he can put up a fight?
Well,
did you not see him at the beginning where like the kid was blowing milk of magnesia onto his open sores? I mean, he has like he basically wears the shelling of an old Masters of the Universe He-Man figure, but underneath that, he's just an old man with a lot of open wounds and sores.
Well, that's where Rictus was supposed to come in and like pick up the fighting slack, and he, as I mentioned earlier, he has this engine block holding up in the air scene that lasts for 30 seconds, and he doesn't do anything with it. I'm like, dude, here's your WWE fight that Alex wants, and you don't get it. Like.
Yeah, they didn't know how to properly utilize him. I was a little underwhelmed by the way that, not so much by the way that Immortan Joe went, because that was satisfying to see him just experience pain and die, but the fact that he doesn't really do much. I don't know. I mean, he's driving a pretty powerful car and he has weapons. I wanted him to put up more of a fight other than just hold Zoe Kravitz. I think it's Zoe Kravitz that he's holding hostage, one of the brides. So that was a bit of a letdown. And then once he's gone, I mean, you don't really have many memorable villains that you can just kind of follow through the rest of that action sequence. It's just like a bunch of what do they call themselves? War boys,
Yeah,
maybe.
war boys.
Yeah, you have a bunch of war boys that are interchangeable, and the guy with the big foot, and then the other guy already died earlier in the movie. So there's really like not a whole lot going on the villain side. Now this is also where I guess Nux gets his redemption, and it didn't work for me. Like I explained earlier, I didn't really get a connection. To me, his behavior was just so erratic. But did you guys buy the connection between him and Riley Keough? That the
Is
fact
this where
that
he starts singing "Remember Me"?
Yes, he has I guess what's supposed to be his big moment, right, where he sacrifices himself. But one, was it necessary? To me, it just felt like manipulation. Like, well, we can't, because in the end, George Miller doesn't have the guts to kill off either Max or Furiosa, so he ends up killing a secondary character that it's not really that important to anybody but maybe Riley Keough. Like, nobody seems particularly bothered when he dies. And I was more upset that they were killing off the old ladies that they picked up on the, by the swamp.
They all died.
They literally just picked them up so they would have like a bigger body count on that drive back.
Because everyone else was too important.
Yeah, does not one of them make it back?
Nope.
That's sad.
They all die.
I didn't actually do like I didn't have my bean counters on for the scene for how many of the people were dying, but yeah, that sucks.
I didn't expect any of them to make it back, honestly.
But still, it's like they were doing well enough, and their desert hideaway, whatever that, like they were alive at least. She had her little plant farm.
She was ready to help provide the new seeds to build their new society. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor, because like those women, the brides, are like the future generation, so they're passing down their wisdom, and then they die.
What did the one have in her bag? There's like a bunch of Mentos or something.
Mentos, yes.
For the Mento tree, yeah.
She was waiting for some Coca-Cola to really shoot those things off.
Really impress them.
Also,
show you a trick.
About the this final action sequence, is Cirque du Soleil really like an efficient way of claiming hostages? Is there not a better way than just like?
Yeah, too much spectacle, not really a whole lot of strategy there.
Yeah.
I mean, so the guy with the guitar, I get it that it's cool, but when you get down to it, he really isn't even interested in defending himself or providing any sort of help to the, other than playing music. Because there's a point where Max is behind him, in front of him, next to him, and he doesn't do anything. He just keeps playing the guitar, and that guitar has a flamethrower.
Yeah.
So, feel the need to call out here in the end, basically the climax of the film on the race scene back to Citadel. This movie, and this is a big thing for me, listeners will know, is I'm very, if you have practical effects in your movie, I will ride or die with you. And the majority of this movie did, but the climax here, I believe 80% of the movie, the effects were practical, which God bless. So the unfortunate part about that, though, is it really, really made the CG sequences at the end here stick out. Like the...
the 3D scenes? Yeah.
And like when Tom Hardy's fighting with the Doof Warrior and someone else, it clearly CG, and like you said, yeah, the 3D, like when the crash happens and the guitar comes flying at you, that's straight up Friday the 13th Part 3. It's like, hey, you want to hit this joint, man?
It's like a Spy Kids 3D, the hand coming out of the screen.
Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. That's from Friday the 13th Part 3. I saw a 3D screening that one time, and I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. There's a guy yo-yoing, and the yo-yo's coming at me. It'll never get better than this. But yeah, Charlize Theron is in a bad way. Furiosa is having a hard time. Her lungs are collapsing, so Max, in his infinite wisdom, stabs her on the other side of the body to kind of even up the score. It looks like she's dying, and so in the ultimate moment of selfishness, Max makes it about himself and tells her, "My name is Max. My name is Max." But very dry and very droll with his delivery on that. She does make it, though, because they make it back to Citadel, and everyone's like, what's going on here? And then they just show the mangled corpse of Immortan Joe. And his poor son is, like, watching this, and he has to be the one to make the call to, like, make them the new gods of the land. He doesn't even have a minute to process that his dad was murdered. So they get back, and I guess, am I wrong to assume that Charlize Theron is now the queen of the land?
I mean, that's what that final shot seems to imply. And this is the what I was going to say earlier, but actually it's a point best made here, which is that grabbing your friends and running away from the Citadel is much easier. It's a lot less complex than taking over the Citadel and then governing over all these people. That is a job that, I don't know, I mean, as badass as Charlize Theron is, and as, I guess, supportive as the survivors are, we don't know what it was like behind the scenes with Immortan Joe. We kind of like caught him on a bad day. right? Like where he got some really bad news and then he acted
Presumably.
on it. Yeah, but there has to be sort of an art to just kind of running, and he was bad at it, but that doesn't mean that Charlize Theron is going to be good at it. That because that wasn't even her main motive at first. She just wanted to get away, which is a lot easier. And now she's the queen or the governess or whatever you want to call it of the Citadel. And I know it's not going to happen, but if there were to be a sequel to Fury Road, it should just take place within the Citadel, and it's just about Charlize Theron and her council trying to figure out what the hell do you have to do to keep this place going. How do you become a better ruler than Immortan Joe without becoming Immortan Joe? That's not hinted at all at the end of this movie, but it should, because it's, it would at least kind of give you that poignancy of like, oh, we want this super exciting road adventure, but then we came back to the real world and now we have to deal with just the really boring, complex consequences of our actions. But no, instead, and I think that Max knows it because he just leaves. It's like, the exciting part of this story is done.
I'm on to other adventures. Yeah.
My life's no longer in danger here. I have no purpose.
I keep searching for that adrenaline rush.
He almost like put her in this position, like, because he was the one that suggested, "Hey, let's go back." Like,
Yeah.
that's your idea, dude, and maybe it is the best possible idea. But so what was it? Like they were like, "Oh, we have enough to last us 160 days."
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. Like that's a lot of resources. I would like, what does Max know? I know he's been about the desert quite a bit, but I would take it. I might take a chance. I'd be
What
like,
world are you in where you can't go 160 days in a vehicle? Well, also they said they had to go on foot, or those bikes. I don't believe that. I think they could have rode that big rig out there for a while. But
Yeah.
you're right. I think that there's no world that you can live in where you're not going to hit some body of water or some civilization at some point in 160 days.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is go for it. I know there's the liberate the people angle that's fun. But
Yeah.
Still, it is kind of funny that Max just pieces out. He's like, "All right, well, dropped you off. Here I go."
Really is the Moses of this movie, isn't he?
That final nod just speaks volumes, I think, going back to what we were talking about earlier, about just kind of the condescension of the patriarchy, where he just goes like, "You're welcome. I let you be in my movie, and now I'm off."
You did good, kid, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yes. Alex, did you write down the quote that closes the movie?
Oh shit! Yeah, I did. Hold
Oh,
on.
you did? I'm so proud of you, because I didn't. I just wrote pretentious quote.
Pretentious quote.
Rosebud.
Where must we go, we who wander this wasteland in search of our better selves? And then Someday by Sugar Ray started playing.
Wasn't that the original History Man or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, why not put it at the beginning? Why do you put it at the end?
It's very self-reflective.
Because the movie wasn't pretentious enough as it was. Actually, I make that joke. The movie itself is not pretentious, but it seems like some of the handling and subsequent fallout from it was. That was going to be the quote that's on the cover of the Criterion of the black and chrome edition of the movie.
I'd buy it.
All right. We have reached the Citadel again. And we've turned off the engine and done as much as we could to talk badly of Fury Road.
Yeah, we navigated that pretty well.
So I'm good with going to real talk if you all are.
I like this plan. We can start again. Just like the old days.
Look, it'll be a hard day, but I guarantee you that 160 days ride that way, there's nothing but salt. At least that way, we might be able to, together, come across some kind of redemption.
And we are back, but before we head into real talk, well, the franchise killers need to take a little potty break. So we're gonna take this opportunity while they're away to take us into PP, our patron pitch. This is where we let patrons know what they can expect on our patron channel, and we let non-patrons know what they're missing out on. This month, Alex, we are going Indian, courtesy of our newest patron, Brandon Curtis. He gets to dictate what the exclusive patron episode is going to be. And he gave us several options, and we picked the movie Singham. I think that's how you pronounce it, at least. You and I are very unfamiliar with Indian cinema, and he seems to be a big fan. And I guess he's going to use his patronage as the means to enlighten us and indoctrinate us. So that will be a Patreon exclusive. We'll go all in on this 2011. I don't even know what it is. I guess it's sort of an action movie, maybe. I don't know. We're going back row blind into this thing.
We'll be flying in blind.
Yeah, full on back row. And then he also gets to pick the QVRs, the Quick Video Reviews for this month, and just doubling down on the Indian theme. We get to pick who does what, and we'll determine that probably by the time we record next episode. But Singham Returns, which means that Singham has a sequel, will be the subject of one of our QVRs, and then the movie Simba, like the Lion King Simba, except it's 2 M's. From what I gather, these two are part of these 3 movies are part of the same universe. So I don't know. We're gonna be talking about the Indian MCU in a way. So there's that. That's part of this month's patron offerings. Also, we'll be doing the usual stuff. You know, you have our cutting room floor where we give you all the clips that don't make it into the episode. Much like with our Oscar episode, this Fury Road episode is shaping up to be a mammoth recording. So expect a lot of stuff to end on the cutting room floor and then swiftly move into our patron. So there will be that. And then, of course, we have Contrarians After Hours. Our little after show where we tell you about other things that we've been watching, that we've been reading, that we've been playing. Sometimes they're related to the main episode, sometimes they're not, but it's always good content. So Alex, what are you bringing to Contrarians After Hours this time?
2 things. One, just because I think you would get a kick out of it, there's a new line of WWE action figures that I wanted to discuss with you, that they're procuring rights to several movie franchises and television shows to make figures that are based off wrestlers' like roles in those movies. So like John Cena in Fast 9, The Rock and Hobbs and Shaw. They've only announced like a set lineup of them. I already got one of them. I just thought you'd get a kick out of that. So yeah, running that down. And also listeners with crossovers. I think there's some movies that y'all have heard of or seen. Way more importantly though, we just wrapped up October. Halloween, sadly, has come and gone. I had like this lachrymose kind of just like spiritual hangover, as well as an actual hangover the day after Halloween. I was like sad it was over. I realize each year, the older I get, how much I enjoy that. Because the older you get, things aren't as special anymore, so the things that are special to you really pop and stand out. So we will be recapping the movies I watched, and you'll be getting like the one-line review of those that I watched. Some of them we've covered on this podcast before, but
love it.
And that will funnel into what our next After Hours will be. So we got a plan here and a roadmap, and I'll be going over all the horror movies that I watched in the month of October. I'm excited to discuss those. Again, briefly, this isn't going to be some 30-hour epic, but he'll be there.
He'll be shorter than the Fury Road episode. Well, on my end, speaking of Fury Road and speaking of Mad Max, Alex, we're doing a little bit of time traveling here. So as of the Fury Road episode, I started the original Mad Max. My foolish plan was originally to watch all 3 Mad Max movies, then Fury Road, then record this episode. Of course, that didn't happen because I just have a job. But I watched the first 20 minutes of Mad Max. So my plan is to finish Mad Max and then at least talk about the first Mad Max in After Hours, it will be pretty interesting just from what I've seen, comparing it to what happened all these years later in Fury Road. Also, in another bit of a Contrarians tie-in, I did what I said I was going to do in the Oscar episode, and I rented the French version of Oscar, the original French adaptation of the play, and that was also quite an experience. So I'll tell you about that. I'll tell you what it has in common with the Sylvester Stallone version, what it doesn't, and where it succeeds, where it fails. I think that you'll enjoy it. And anybody that listened to the Oscar episode, and especially if you watch the movie, I think that you'll get a kick out of that as well. So that's coming up. Also, I kind of want to take this little bit to shout out our friend, previous guest, strong supporter, Corey Ari. We recorded, I don't think we ever mentioned on the show, but we recorded a little bit of a voiceover for a movie that he's been working on a while ago. Do you remember, Alex?
Yeah.
So
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So that movie wrapped. They're in the process of, I guess, doing the special effects. And basically they have an Indiegogo campaign just to raise money for the special effects and their festival circuit run. So I'm going to put the link on the show notes. If you can click on that link, watch the trailer that's on their Indiegogo page, and then if you have a little bit of money to donate to independent filmmakers, go for it, because then you get to watch a movie that has, unless they cut us out of the movie, has Alex and I in the background, I guess, doing voiceover for a commercial for body bags, I think it was. So yeah, check out the show notes for Corey's movie. He wrote it, and he's one of the main actors in it. It's called The Vice Mayors.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyway, Vice Mayors aside, we have all the Indian movies coming up, and also Mad Max, Oscar, a whole bunch of Halloween watches, and also action figures based on wrestlers who were in movies. That's quite the After Hours. If any of that sounds interesting, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/ContrarianPrime. Check out our tiers, see if you want to contribute to any of the levels, and just join the Contrarian supplements.
Yeah, for $1, $3, $5, $10, we have our different tiers. Just come in, drop us $1. See if you like it. You know you're going to. We know you're going to. You'll stick around, and then you'll just have to have no choice but keep climbing up the ranks until you get to tell us what to do. Select movies for us to do quick video reviews for you. Personalized video reviews. Just more work for y'all, because we appreciate and love y'all so much. So bring it. And our patrons that we have currently, we love y'all, and we thank you for sharing not only your time, but your hard-earned dollars with us. I was going to say American dollar, but we have international contributors as well. Yes. So whatever your currency is, we will accept it gleefully. So come on in, join, say hi to one another, and have a good time. And with PP over, I think it's time to welcome... Yes, there they are. I can see them coming back into the studio. I see the franchise killer trio just approaching, taking their seats. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hey there.
I wish that you guys could see the setup that we have here, because my camera is on directly on my face, basically. Alex has his camera turned off, and the franchise killers have their camera on, but they're not really facing me unless they turn and look over their shoulders. So all throughout Contrarians Corner, I couldn't tell if they were in pain talking trash about Mad Max, or if they were really enjoying the chance of just trashing it. I don't know. I don't know what this real talk is going to be about. Are we going to discuss, peacefully, or are they mad that we don't like Mad Max? Maybe I like Mad Max. We're about to find out. This is Real Talk. Yeah, I'm going to resign myself and let everyone get their feelings out first, so that I think it just speaks to my ambivalence, but we'll get to that. Mad Max Fury Road, again, released in May of 2015. Budget, a disputed budget of between $155 million and $185 million. Box office return of a little under $380 million. Again, this movie became a personality trait. This is the type of movie now that people list on their Tinder bio as just, part of their personality. It seemed to have just conquered this age range of people and put them under its spell. I use the term millennials in the first half, and
I know that's enough to rile people up, so I'll say it again. It's a film for millennials, but it's not just millennials that it casts under its spell. The rich old white dudes that control the Academy Awards thought that it was worthy of praise as well. That praise included a fucking Best Picture nomination, as well as a Best Director nomination, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Production Design, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, Best Visual Effects. It won 6 of the technical awards. George Miller, no stranger to the Academy Award category. He was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay for Babe in 1995. Y'all had mentioned he directed and wrote Babe Pig in the City. While he did not direct Babe in 1995, he was the writer on it. That was Chris Noonan, which I'll kind of bring Babe back in the discussion if you can believe it or not. I will find a way to bring that back in here. But Julio, this thing was 97%. We just mentioned the accolades from the Academy that it received. And while I am not one of these people that's a naysayer about it necessarily, there were people that were. Was Armand White one of them?
Well, here's the thing. This movie has over 400 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and I gave up searching for quotes about 100 in. So Armand White was not on those glorious first 100 quotes. But you know who was? Pamela Powell from the Daily Journal, who said, Mad Max Fury Road is one of the worst and meaningless movies I have ever seen.
Wow. What a dick.
There has to be much worse out there that she's seen.
I feel like she had a really bad day. It sounds like she just finished getting through a breakup and just was ready to shit on something and saw Mad Max and was just like, this is it.
Perfect.
Next, CJ Prince from Way Too Indie says, action films with a simple one-track mindset can be far from a bad thing, but Fury Road never successfully establishes any stakes. I mean, I don't agree, but I also don't disagree. There are things in there that I can just latch onto, as we will find out. And then Hannah Hodson from Autostraddle says, in a film with such a strong female lead, how could George Miller write such thoroughly forgettable supporting characters? Also, how in the hell is Zoe Kravitz the sole black person in this future Earth?
That's a valid question.
On all fronts. All right. Before we get into it, I guess, Alex, I'm gonna steal your bit. I'm gonna ask our guests and you, how did you watch Mad Max Fury Road?
Well, Julio, Google lied to me when I looked it up and said the only way to watch it online was renting it through Amazon Prime. So thank God I texted you. I texted you, I'm absolutely furious I have to pay to watch this. And you said, I thought you had HBO Max. It's on there. And so, fortunately, I didn't click rent yet. So hopped on HBO Max and watched this on my laptop while I was doing some work today. And I was heavily multitasking, heavily caffeinated, taking notes, working, and watching this movie at the same time. And yeah, I mean, I watched on my laptop, so I can't say too much complimentary about the stream or anything like that, which is going to be kind of one of my points about my whole experience with this movie to begin with that will lend into it. But let's go over to our guests. Y'all own the Chrome and Black Blu-ray, or what's going on?
So I'll take it first. I own 2 copies of this film. I have the 4K Blu-ray, and I also have the Best Buy Steelbook.
Oh,
ooh, getting fancy. Yeah, this is one of the few movies I have 2 copies of, if that's any indication of how I feel about it.
He actually always buys 2 copies of movies he hates.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, those Best Buy Steelbooks are no joke. I have several of those. The art on those is always fucking killer. The Drive one I own is outstanding.
Oh, yeah, I have that one too. Awesome. It's beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, I watched this on the 4K Blu-ray. Yeah, looked great. That's how I viewed it.
Well, Irene and I watched it. We unfortunately don't have HBO Max, so we were forced to spend the $4 to watch it on Amazon Prime.
Owned.
Yeah, we got owned, and I enjoyed my experience watching it on here. Though I kind of wish I could have forced Reese to come over with his 4K. I think that would have been visually more stunning. But
the problem with that, sir, is you don't have a 4K player.
Oh, there is a problem. I'd force you to bring your Xbox over.
Well, I watched it on HBO last night. I just sat in front of the TV, and it was, before I say anything negative about the movie or even anything else that's positive, I don't know that anybody would disagree that it looks great. I was watching it. I think I even made a note of it halfway through. I'm like, this is for real talk. This movie looks amazing. And I watched it in theaters when it first came out. And I remember thinking it looked great, but also there was so much more going on because, the hype, and it was a packed theater. But this time, just sitting back and kind of appreciating it all these years later, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I don't know how much of it came through, Alex, on your laptop, but I would strongly recommend at one point just kind of like have it play in the background and take a look every now and then, because it's really pretty to look at when people are not losing their faces and when they're not focusing on the tumors.
So yeah, I completely believe that's to kind of lead in here. The first time I saw this movie, I watched it on my TV at home. This was my second time watching it, and I realized on this rewatch that a lot of the mysticism of this movie definitely was lost on the fact I did not see it in the theater.
Yep.
So I'm willing to concede that point. I still stand by some of the other stuff I said, but I don't remember so I left my movie theater line of work after working for almost 10 years there in 2014, and I honestly can't tell you the next time I went to a movie theater. I know it wasn't good time in 2017, but that's the first time I remember going back to a movie theater in 2017. So this movie came and went, and I was just like, okay. And then I saw it on my TV at home, and I was like, okay. But then rewatching it today, I just realized, yeah, I probably should have seen this in the theater to get the full effect of it, because that a lot of this movie does rely on its visual prowess and the scope of what it is. So that's kind of my lead in. I have thoughts, but like I said, I want to be a gracious host, Julio. So
give us a chance, man.
No, trust me. There's been plenty of people that have tried to sell this movie to me as the second coming of Christ, and I'm like, all right, that's cool. But yeah, just throw it over to our guests in any order y'all want to go in. Overall thoughts, experiences with this movie, legacy, anything you got, anything you want to put out there. Let's hear it.
I think Irina's definitely one to cue us up.
Wait,
I'm going to paint a picture of our first time, because all three of us watched it together the first time in theaters. Very coming to Jesus moment. I mean, we saw it at the Evo in Kyle, and it was I think it was premiere, and we saw it in the IMAX and Dolby Atmos. Yeah. And it was I mean, I had never seen a Mad Max movie before, and I didn't even know what I was getting into. I was just blown away. But I think Irina, what were your thoughts like going into that movie? Had you even seen any of them before?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure my mom had put on Mad Max a couple times before. But my other very prominent experience with Mad Max was we saw what was it? Which one was it? The one that just starts with a straight up rape scene in the beginning. Was that the second one?
It's not the first one.
Anyway, that one we saw at a car rally, straight up.
It was outside. That was
Road Warrior. Yes, yeah. We watched Road Warrior, and that experience is just burned into my brain. But yeah. So this was my other memorable Mad Max experience, because, like you said, there's a lot lost when you don't watch it on the big screen. It's definitely made and tailored for viewing at its perfect level on the big screens. Because even when we were watching it again in our own house, David and I were both talking about how these scenes didn't quite hit as hard as they did when we saw it in the IMAX theater, I mean,
the music itself
the music
is one of the biggest parts.
Isn't as punchy somehow, and the visuals are just so much more enjoyable when you get to see it on a larger screen. But I guess my experience of Fury Road was just that of pure adrenaline. And I think the only other thing I can equate it to is I love really angry metal music. And it's mostly because I don't have a lot of anger myself, but I really love getting to experience it through some other form of media. So this movie kind of had that energy for me. Mm-hmm. So I came out of the theater just kind of pumped.
She was high octane.
I'm mostly a very lethargic, chill person. So like there are very few things that can inject that. So I was sniffing some fumes for sure.
No, I remember you like bouncing around afterward. You're just like, let's watch it again.
I want to punch something.
Yeah, I think this was the give me my Oscar. This was my best performance yet. Hating on this movie.
Yep. Yeah. No, I was impressed. You were doing a good job.
Yeah. No, I love this movie, and that first experience that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Once they get into their cars and they go out into the desert, and you have this extended 30-minute sequence of just absolute mayhem, and it's just such perfectly orchestrated chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and from George Miller, a director that we thought was dormant, like, because we had seen Happy Feet, and it's like, okay, he's doing this weird thing, and he's like,
he's making children's movies, I guess.
He just threw such a curveball here, and to come back in so forcefully and so strong and deliver this, like in the theater, when that sandstorm finishes and you see the fuse and the fuse is going out and it goes silent, George Miller's like, yeah, that's my mic drop. My fuse is this mic drop. And my friend, our friend AJ, who was sitting right next to me, was just like, in that silent moment, he was like, damn. Like, it was just like, it was so good. And then he just keeps piling it on after that. It's like, okay, you want more of that? More. It's the biggest adrenaline rush I've ever experienced in a theater. And I know that's a very bro-y, like, yeah.
Yeah, it is
like,
very bro-y.
Like, it's for a specific type of viewer. But for me, it was just dialed in perfectly. Like, it really, this is one of those, like, flash in the pan moments where it's like, you don't get movies like this. Like, Warner Brothers doesn't greenlight R-rated movies. It is an R-rated movie. And movies like this that actually don't have much of a plot. It's just like an exercise in just pure action cinema.
Yeah.
And it's done in a way that's just it's different and unique. The person who edited the action is actually the wife of George Miller, and he selected her because he wanted action to be edited in a way that no man could edit it. Like, he wanted it to look different, and it does look different.
Yeah,
like, there's something about this action that it's like, I can't take my eye off of it. Like, my plan going into this was to, like, divvy this up. I was gonna watch this movie in 2 parts, like, watch the first half when it was convenient and then come back. But I ended up sitting on my couch, just like eyes glued to the screen, just like, oh my god, like, I can't take my eyes off of this thing. It's just, and I had seen it many times before. It's one of those movies that I don't always think to put on, but when I put it on,
it grabs you.
I can't leave. Like, it's magnetic in a way.
I kind of want to say what might speak to maybe our generation as far as movies go is, like, I can tell you, for a while, I got so sick of seeing so many dramatic films in theaters where it's like an over-exercise in emotion, that it was kind of cathartic and a bit of a relief to watch something that was kind of just a fluff, artistic, like, beautiful piece where
like
you're not really,
rock.
like, being dragged through the dumps of human depression. Like, I just, I needed a break, you know? So I think that this movie kind of acts like that for me.
Yeah.
I tried to get both fists into my mouth while you were saying that.
Look, if it's any indicator of how we feel about this, especially Reese, so this is our podcast room we're in right now, and we have a wall of movie posters that each individual person in our podcast picked one of their favorite movies that they would put up on the wall. And of course, the crowning jewel, the biggest poster centered in the middle of the room, is Mad Max Fury Road. A custom poster that Reese had picked and made, someone in the Ukraine made and shipped over here. It's beautiful.
Nice.
And then meanwhile, I picked Princess Bride, and it's nice on off to the corner.
Yeah, and I know we end up echoing the entire internet here, and we've heard it a million times over. But for me, it's just one of those things I look at and I'm like, I can't. It's indisputable for me. I can't deny how much I love this movie.
Well, it's like the Lord of the Rings got more Oscars than pretty much anything out there, but it lives up to the hype. So
yeah.
In a similar way.
Hey, maybe not for some of these people. It is a long movie, right, Alex?
What, Lord of the Rings?
Got him.
Yeah.
Each of them.
Each of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a weekend investment if you want to watch all three of them.
That's more of like a day investment for us. You gotta start like 8 in the morning.
I actually don't disagree with a lot of the things that you guys have said. I do disagree with the fact that you guys are echoing the internet, because I think that there's enough fractions of love for this movie.
Yeah.
Some of them speak to what you guys were saying. Some of them I think go a little further, which I don't know about Alex, but I think that my whatever negative thoughts I have about Mad Max have to do partly with the overreaction to it, more so than the movie. And I'm human, so it just kind of like affects my viewing. I think Alex has told this story before. We kind of like reference every now and then about just the journey of Juno.
Yeah.
Academy Award winner Juno, which depending on when you watched it, you might have experienced the movie in a different way, whether you watched it before the hype or during the hype or after the hype.
Right.
And that is something similar here with Fury Road, where I watched it when the hype was just starting. So I remember going to the theater, having seen just like a few people, like not a few people, a whole bunch of people tweeting about it and just being over the moon. I remember, I think it was Patton Oswalt who was just like praising the movie and just talking about how George Miller had basically just taken everybody to school. And and I watched it and I had a good time, and I was like, he was right. That was a good action movie.
Yeah.
What you were saying, that was fluff, but it was perfectly executed fluff. I had a great time. This movie did not give me any greater understanding of the world, but I didn't need it to, and that's fine. But then at some point, the narrative changed into like Mad Max being something deeper, I guess. It's something more resonant, and that's where I was like, I don't know about that, and I could be missing something, or there could be it could be on me partly. My main focus when I was rewatching it this time was trying to figure out what is it about this movie that is not really connecting with me, but connecting with other people. I knew just based on having watched it before that it had something to do probably with Nux. I know that the Nux character has like some pretty emotional beats that just don't do anything for me, but I think that they work for other people, so that probably has something to do with it. I think that the setting is a lot of fun when you're talking about like racing cars and all that stuff, but when it comes to me caring about these characters, not so much. Just the way they speak, and it's just so removed from reality that I think it kind of gets in the way of me really getting an emotional response when it gets to those big beats in the movie, right? Like when Max reveals his name to Furiosa, I just don't feel it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's fine if we're talking about an action movie. But I kind of feel like the people that hail it as the best movie of the year, or, this, I would like to think that they're getting something more emotionally rich than I am. So they really tear up when Max says his name, and they really tear up when Nux sacrifices himself. I'll give it this. This time I felt a little more. When he said "witness me," I was like, oh, okay. I felt it a little bit, but I wasn't like devastated. And I kind of feel like that the perfect model of watching this movie should have you just destroyed at that moment.
Right.
No, I agree. And I actually agree with this being one of the Oscar nominees. Frankly, I do get kind of bored with the quiet dramas that are always picked for the top 10 Oscar nominees. And I kind of like get a little excited when, the odd little genre pick finds its way into the conversation there. Just because I don't know. It's just like, hey, it kind of shakes up the Oscar game.
It made an impact of some kind.
Yeah.
And I thought if there was one, and I know this sounds crazy, but if there was one to win it, I was kind of pulling for Mad Max just because, why not?
It's
Like,
all a joke anyway.
exactly. Like, I think the Oscars are definitely a joke. Like, I don't know how they ever come to their decisions, but it's always, there's always so many snubs or just things that are left out that they're just so baffling. But that kind of opens up a conversation, though, where it's like, when do we acknowledge the best of a possible genre movie? Like for me, Mad Max it's one of the best action movies, and I think that makes it a qualifier into the Oscars, just because it operates on the highest possible level in the action genre. I just think that, like, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just it's like
no,
streaming
I get your point. I get your point, because it's I do have an answer, and of course it's all very subjective, as you know, all these contests and awards and a lot. But I've always measured the idea of rewarding a movie. You know, what makes a movie better than others, right? And yes, I think that excellence in its genre is definitely a metric that you can use. I personally lean more towards the effect it has on me, and I do think that Fury Road is it can be exhilarating, especially when you're watching a movie theater and you're like all in on it. I mean, just a few episodes ago, I was defending Baby Driver against Alex's attacks, because I was like, when that movie is on, it's on. And I think that the way I feel
Mad Max
about,
is better than Baby Driver. I'll say that right now.
You had to go there. When Baby Driver is working, when those high scenes are happening, when he's driving, when the music is flowing and everything, I feel that way. I think the way that a lot of people feel about Fury Road. So on that sense, I can get it. When a movie makes you feel that way, yes, that's in a way excellence on that genre. But neither Baby Driver nor Fury Road leaves me with. I mean, this sounds pretentious. Speaking of pretentious quotes at the end of the movie or whatever, but you know, it doesn't leave me with a better understanding of the world, which is one of the reasons why I picked that quote, where like that critic was saying that, you know, it was handling political issues, and I was like, you're pushing too hard.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me that Mad Max deserved an award because it was one of the best executed action movies, I understand that. But for the people that are saying that Mad Max is the best movie of the year,
hold on. We're saying best executed action movie of 2015, right?
Right, but I mean, I do have a follow-up where I want to hear what anybody else's like favorite action movies are. Like, if not Mad Max, what's the pinnacle of that genre? But I would say the thing is, I want, when I decide, oh, this was the best movie of the year, for, you know, anybody that asks, I'll be like, oh, it's the movie that really shook me emotionally, not necessarily in a dark, depressing way, although that can be sometimes the case, but also in a way that just made me think about life and think about stuff. Like, Mad Max doesn't make me think. Mad Max pumps me up. Baby Driver makes me up, but I walk away from it and I was like, that was like riding a roller coaster, but I didn't come away from it with new ideas in my head. And that's fine. You know, it doesn't have to do that. But I would say that the reason why I kind of have a resistance to some of the praise it gets is because I believe that there's part of the praise that's getting is for something that it doesn't do for me, which is give me emotions beyond the thrill of the chase, the thrill of those rides. But okay, so Fury Road aside, do you guys have other action movies that you love?
Oh, for sure. Do you want like what I feel like is the pinnacle of,
yes,
you know, action in, like, give me a span of years, like, because I could.
Well, I would say just like on your very
answer
particular
is
experience.
T2. The answer is T2.
T2 is excellent. Yeah, for sure. The action in that is spectacular. I think the Mission Impossible franchise has given it a run for its money as of late.
The Planet of the Apes could also be argued as action.
I less associate those with action. Like that Planet of the Apes, there's a lot more.
John Wick?
John Wick, yes, if you want your gun fu or whatever the heck it's called. But honestly, this sounds redundant. I think Fury Road is the best action movie that I have seen. Like if you're going for like if I'm to recommend someone an action movie, like do you want the best fucking action? I will say Fury Road. I and that's not just because I'm on the Fury Road episode. That's because I honestly, truly believe that. Like, I just think it is the best action, and that is like big bold letters, action. Like, don't go to this for anything else. Like, there are some profound-ish things to think about with this movie, but that's not why you see Fury Road. It is a straight up chase movie, back and forth. Action, 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 and I think it is executed at the utmost level. So yes, with a bullet, I would put Fury Road at the top if I'm recommending an action movie. But there's definitely a lot of other movies that do it exceptionally well.
Lord of the Rings has action in it.
Yeah, but Lord of the Rings, you don't... It's not like, yeah, Lord of the Rings, the action movie.
No,
well, it's like if someone came up to you and said, like, hey, what's a good action movie? You're just like, Lord of the Rings.
Well, granted, I say that whenever they bring up any, like, oh, good comedy, Lord of the Rings. A good sci-fi, Lord of the Rings.
Those
fantasy.
Hobbits, though?
Oh,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, my friend. What about a good score? I don't know. Hobbit? No. Lord of the Rings.
Well, how about you, Irina? Would you put Fury Road at the very top of your action movie list?
It's complicated for me because I usually don't gravitate towards action, and I think that might speak to why I like this one so much, is because it's kind of just giving you everything you want. I get tired with the same old routines being played across the screen over and over. But I would say, like, along with my favorite action films, the only other one that really is popping into my head right now would be things like John Wick and
Gladiator.
The Matrix. I love Gladiator too, but that's also kind of, it's complicated because it's action, but it's also just something
Drama.
a little more than that. Yeah. So strictly, if you're like kind of cutting everything else out and it's just action, Mad Max, but I'm more of a Matrix person myself.
I'm glad someone fucking finally said it. The Matrix, that yeah. The first one specifically.
I usually kind of like forget about the others. I'm more talking about the first.
Also, fucking Police Story. If you've seen that, that is like, oh my gosh, chef's kiss.
Is that Jackie Chan?
Yes, that was so good. Action is amazing in that.
And I know I haven't seen it, but I know a lot of people swear by The Raid and The Raid 2.
Oh, The Raid is amazing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think it's time to unleash the Kraken.
Here we go.
You've been hearing us be
Unleash
extremely
the
positive
Kraken.
and somewhat positive about the movie.
There's been some insanely hyperbolic things stated on this podcast. So yeah, first and foremost, The Matrix is probably the best modern example of that, of an action movie that could exist in a sense that changed the world.
Mm-hmm.
That thing.
There's an age gap for sure, but T2 is the answer. And by age gap, I mean y'all are younger than me, and Julio's much, much older than me.
So
I guess I hit the sweet spot of that. But T2 is always the answer to that, if you're not including like sci-fi shit. But
Do you want to know what this age gap is all about, Alex? Or just as an extra example, my answer is Die Hard. So
Die
please
Hard's
proceed.
good. That's a good one. Well, honestly, Independence Day comes to mind for me too. To me, that is like the embodiment of the classic American action film. Just this ridiculous plot. America is at threat here, and the visual effects, they hold up to today. I watched that movie again on Independence Day this year, and I was like, holy shit, this holds up. That's one that comes to mind. Okay, so here's the deal, you fucks. With Mad Max Fury Road. First and foremost, not going to criticize anyone for getting emotional about watching a movie, considering I almost started crying in the theater during Halloween Kills. So that's I've got that on my plate.
Lost all credibility already.
With Mad Max Fury Road, first of all, hearing y'all tell a story about seeing a movie at a movie theater in Kyle, that's amazing. I moved to Kyle in 2002. That's where I went to high school, and that like literal tumbleweeds and shit is all that was there when I went there. So hearing y'all talk about going to a movie theater there is very entertaining. I appreciate the visual effects of it all. I appreciate that in all movies. At the end of the day, I feel that if that's your movie, that's a bit of a crutch. I think that Inception and Interstellar, or, you know, take your pick of those type of movies that are big event movies, even, you know, Independence Day, things that I referenced there, there still has to be something more to it than me watching it and go, well, I wish I had watched this in a movie theater so that I could be enjoying it more than I am right now. With those movies, that's definitely the case, but it's still enough in there to keep my train of thought. This movie is just chase scene, which is fine because it does that very well. George Miller knows what he's doing. He knows how to do it well. That's better than him trying to divert away from that and do something different or dramatic that doesn't work. And then we're kind of just left here like life on its side. Instead, we watch this and we're like, this is great for what it is. From the Oscars perspective, speaking of age ranges, there's different groups of people. Some people think the Oscars lost all, at least people that I know of. And there's probably some people that think the Oscars lost credibility in like the 50s and shit. But I know there are people that think the Oscars lost credibility when Beauty and the Beast was nominated for Best Picture in 1992 because an animated film was nominated for Best Picture. And I know there's people that think the Academy Awards lost all credibility in 96 when Babe was nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, there it is.
Yes. And so...
Was it actually nominated for Best Picture?
Yeah.
Babe, yeah. James Cromwell was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I think it was Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Adapted Screenplay, Art Direction, Film Editing, and Visual Effects.
Like, Babe is good, but I don't know if I'm...
that's the point. Like, Babe's a great movie, but exactly to that point, it's like, that's a bit quizzical. I'm not going to say that I think the Oscars lost credibility with Mad Max, so y'all can all unclench your chests there.
Buttholes relax now.
It's clear that in the wake of The Dark Knight, they reassessed their lineup. The next year after The Dark Knight is when they said, hey, we can have 10 nominees. And then they realized there's not really 10 good movies that come out in a year, so they have to just say we can have up to 10 nominees. And since then, they've tried to include things like, you know, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because Up got nominated for Best Picture. That's cool. District 9 got nominated for Best Picture. That's fucking awesome. But they have made a conscious effort since The Dark Knight and the negative, you know, feedback they got for not properly giving that movie its just due to say, okay, we have to dip our toe into these other movies. And with Mad Max, I think it was a safe bet, especially in the time period it came out. That kind of leads to my next point here. Irina, do you connect to this movie? I once said to somebody that I think this movie's okay, not great, and they said it's because I'm a man.
Oh.
And, you know, I don't understand it from a female perspective. Do you put too much weight into that?
No, I never actually thought of whether it affected me more being a woman because I don't know. It never actually felt like too heavy-handed with that in my mind. I don't know. I never felt that way.
Well, we have talked about before how this seemed to be a more appropriate adaptation of girl power. I mean, whereas some are very obvious and in your face with it.
Well, this is much closer to something like Alien than it is to
Yeah.
that
Which
Avengers.
is one of the best forms of a female action hero.
To answer you, Alex,
Correct.
I hate that kind of comment that people make because, again, like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, they don't have anything to back that up with. It's just a blanket statement so that they can avoid talking about any other
and
issues.
it's dividing it. You're never going to see my side, therefore the conversation's over.
Yeah, it's not really an open debate by that point.
Well, I'm always
wanted
open though. Just kind of like this is to your point, Alex, or I guess to your question. I think that sometimes that point of view is valid. Like if it's followed by an explanation.
Yeah.
But because I've had my eyes opened about something, about movies, about art in general, that I was coming at from a very specific point of view, and then someone else explained why they liked it or why they disliked it, and it was something that wouldn't have ever crossed my mind. And that sometimes had to do with gender, sometimes it had to do with upbringing, cultural background, whatever. So I mean, I'm not 100% against somebody telling me you don't get it because you're not experiencing it as a woman. I don't think it applies to Mad Max. I mean, I'm glad to hear a woman say it on the show, because otherwise I would sound like an asshole.
Right.
But you just said it, and I can repeat it. Like, I don't think that and that's not a bad thing. I think that a lot of people can project their own narrative and kind of like enhance whatever, I don't know, feminist / girl power / whatever elements are in Fury Road, and praise the movie for that, and that's fine. But to turn that into a criticism of the people that don't like it, and just saying that, oh, well, you're just missing out on this crucial element, the female element of the movie, I don't think it applies. I wouldn't agree. So, I mean, I'm with you on that side, Alex.
Yeah, I was mainly I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to offend any of our guests by saying that, so I wanted to make sure that was clear. We trashed some movie, Julio, and we got told that it's because we were guys that we didn't get it. I can't remember what it was, but
that's happened a few times.
I'm glad to hear the female perspective on that, because that puts me at ease, because I don't think this movie shoehorns that in or spoon feeds it to you at all. I think it's just kind of part of the story. You know, Julio and I talked about The Untouchables, the French movie. Like, there's not that many overtones of racism in it just because they don't talk about it. And that's just kind of like in this, there's not like these overtones of rah-rah girls or men bad type thing just because it's presented the way it is. And I really appreciate that part of it, because it seems like there's a lot of things that are kind of in flux right now, in a lot of ways rightfully so, but they come across as heavy-handed or almost pandering to a certain degree. And one of the things I can be most complimentary about this movie is that is not the case at all.
Right.
It's entertaining. And, you know, for someone like me that likes my movies to be kept at a tight 90 minutes, this thing goes 2 hours and I don't feel the runtime at all. So that's something I'm complimentary about too. I like it. I do. It's the Juno effect. I saw Juno and I was like, that was fun. And, you know, I saw it at like a limited release at our theater for some reason in Denton got it before everyone else did. And I saw it. I was like, that was a fun movie. And then it started hitting theaters and like the festival circuit and stuff. And everyone's like, oh my God, this is like this generation defining, you know, movie. And this is Best Picture. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, all right, let's pump the brakes on all that. And that's kind of how I felt with this, but it's in reverse order because I saw this way after all the hype and everything. That's worse. That was a worse experience. Because on this rewatch for me, I enjoyed it a lot more. The first time I watched it, I had this feeling of like, really? This is where the bar is for like Best Picture, and this is what everyone was telling me that I need to see. So I'm glad that's gone, and I'm glad now that I can have enjoyed what I saw. It's just, I don't know. I'm old and bitter, and I know what I like, and I know what I want from movies that are treated like this got treated. And clearly I am in the wrong because now we live in the time of this and Marvel bullshit. And like, I'm still here living 5 years ago saying that everyone needs to go see Good Time and it's the best movie ever. And so
when they're going to make another T2?
No, well, they can't. That's because that movie's that's like one of those, you know, circling wrestling back into it, wrestling fans always argue about, you know, what the best match ever is. And there's some matches that I call like T2. And why I say that is, you know, I don't think that's the best movie ever made, but if someone told me it was, I wouldn't argue with them. And that's how I feel about T2. So yeah, I think it comes down to just being old and jaded. I love Tom Hardy. I love Charlize Theron. I wasn't joking too much in the first half. I think Nicholas Hoult is just a poor man's Eddie Redmayne, and Eddie Redmayne is a poor man's Hugh Grant, and that's just the absolute state of that is depressing. So I don't know. It's a movie I'd still give like a B to because the action is great, and like I said, I love the practical effects. And
well, would you acknowledge, Alex, that it is a breath of fresh air, though? Because you usually, you know, you'll be the first to complain when something is just kind of like beating a dead horse. The MCU movies and just like the sequels and the remakes and whatever. And this, yes, it is a sequel in a way, but it kind of, I think it stands on its own, and it is, you know, I felt that it was somewhat unique, and it was something new. It was not, you know.
So that's something else I kind of was trying to formulate my thoughts on watching this, because it is a little different, a little new. And I think it's the best we can do right now, or the best we can hope for, that someone like George Miller comes to Warner Brothers and is like, hey, I'm going to make a sequel to Mad Max. And that's all they need. They trust him to make what he wants to make, and he makes what he wants to make, and it's this movie that we're treated to. Sadly, you know, no one's going to be able to come to with an original idea like this and it get bankrolled anymore. So I think, to your question and to your point, this is as good as we can hope for from a certain perspective in today's environment for a movie like this to succeed on a wide scale and get like a major release and be packed with A-list actors and that type of shit. So yeah, my experience rewatching it was much more positive than my first time.
Mm-hmm. I would hope that right now, like after making Fury Road, George Miller would be able to walk up to any studio and just go like, I want to just make this action movie that has zero ties to any properties. And they'll be like, that's cool. You're the guy that made Fury Road. You can do whatever you want.
I would assume,
don't know,
yeah.
but I would hope so. So in that sense, I think a Fury Road also plays a very important role in just keeping talented people doing things that we enjoy. But you guys are the franchise guys. So I was telling you before we started recording, my original plan was to watch all 3 Mad Max movies and then rewatch Fury Road because I'd never seen all the others. And that became very quickly, it became impossible. So I watched like the first 30 minutes of the first movie. Now, thanks to Irina, I know that Road Warrior opens on a horrific rape scene, apparently. And
that's I remembered.
And I know that the third movie has Tina Turner. Have you guys seen all of them? Do you have thoughts about the franchise as opposed to, you know, when it comes to how it ties into Fury Road, what Fury Road does with the Mad Max character? Like, do you think that this movie would be better if it was not a Mad Max movie and if it was just Fury Road, you know, without Mad Max?
So I'll chime in. I have seen the whole franchise, and I think, as I stated earlier, that all these films are completely different from the one before it. So Mad Max, the first one is kind of slightly pre-apocalypse. So Max is like, he's like a police officer.
Like pre-Mad?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very low budget. And you get the sense that George Miller really, he had not committed to this like post-apocalyptic desert planet. Like there's signs of disorder,
like a crumbling society.
Yeah, the society is crumbling for sure. That movie ends. Next movie, Road Warrior, it's a complete, it is the desert world. We have a silent protagonist. He's lost his love and his I think he had a daughter in the first one who dies as well, but it has been a long time since I've seen it. But yeah, that's kind of what sets the template for what to expect with the Mad Max franchise. And then Thunderdome is like just a straight up 80s movie. Like it's like the ones before it, yeah, they are, you can kind of tell when they were made, but the Thunderdome's the most like obvious, like, yeah, this is a fucking 80s movie. Like it's that movie, and it's weird because there's hardly any car chases in that one. There's a lot of kids, there's a lot of Tina Turner stuff, there's a lot of like there's a fight in a dome, the Thunderdome.
The Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Doug Dimmadome.
And then we end on this kind of like almost train sequence slash car chase. So they do finally get there, but it's all these movies are so different from one another. So when Fury Road comes around, it really isn't jarring that this movie is different from the ones before it. I will say though, it's like at least 30 years later than Thunderdome, so it's jarring almost to see this franchise with a modern sheen on it. But I don't think any of the charm of the franchise is diminished. That's something that like has carried through weirdly for it. So yeah, I think it fits in this franchise, and I totally love it. And I kind of referenced James Bond earlier. I almost see this as like the Casino Royale reboot of
It's a great analogy.
Mad Max franchise, where it's like, yeah, we're bringing this into the modern era. It is carrying over elements from the previous ones, but this is like this is the new template that we're going to build on. So that's kind of how I feel we're at with this franchise.
I love that.
Yeah.
I wanted to shout out the editor that you mentioned, Reese, because I didn't know that Margaret Sixel is married to George Miller since 1995. She edited Fury Road, Happy Feet, and Babe, Pig in the City. This movie flies by, and it's in large part because of the way it's edited. So that's
the editing. Awesome. I didn't do too much trivia research because I knew it was going to be a loaded convo, but I did see it took like 3 months to get through all the film that was originally shot for this before they like actually got to the editing process, because there was like 400 hours or some shit.
Yeah, 470 hours of footage. I can't even believe
that. And they had someone make a real live flamethrower guitar.
I also wanted to shout out because he's probably, well, he might have turned off the episode by now, but our friend Chaz Fisher, he's a massive fan of this movie, and he actually did a Draft Zero episode on his podcast where they were talking about it from the visual point of view. And I'd listened to it before. I listened to it today while I was driving to work because I wanted to just refresh myself, because they're very positive. Him, Stu, his co-host, and they had Matt Brown as a guest. And Matt has written a book about Fury Road, and they were talking about it not from the point of view of story so much, but more as far as like the visual aspect of it, and how it drove the story from time to time. And it was a lot of stuff that, again, much like when I heard you guys talk, I was like, I agree with all of this. It just doesn't hit me as hard.
Right. Yeah.
I remember saying with them one time, I was like, it's okay, and like I could hear them buying plane tickets to fly from Australia over to kill me.
Well, they actually mentioned us at the end of the episode, Alex. Like Chaz brings it up as in like, oh yeah, our friends Julio and Alex, they usually have this stance that Mad Max is just okay, the Fury Road is just okay, and hopefully we've changed our mind. And I have to say, nope, you haven't, but it's okay. Well, he has like, there's really cool stuff that I hadn't like really noticed, I guess, thought about while I was watching the movie. Like he's talking about how Max starts the movie being an involuntary blood donor, right? He's hooked up and he's not giving his blood willingly, and then he ends the movie willingly giving his blood to Charlize Theron. And I was like, it's good because it's not the kind of thing that jumps at you when you're watching it, talking about.
I guess, yeah, that's the type of shit though. You could be like, oh, and Joker, we all wear masks. It's like, all right, come on.
But I like it because it's not like nobody verbalizes that. It's just something that's there in the movie, and if you pick it up, then that's great. And if you don't, it's not like you don't understand what's happening. So I could totally, and they mention a lot of like visual stuff that it shows just how much there is behind it as far as just putting together this complicated thing. It's not just the cars going fast. It's just there's a lot of visual motifs, and I can dig that. I can appreciate it on an intellectual level, just not on an emotional one.
I can appreciate that. That's for me. I'm not one of those people. That's not why this is one of my favorite movies. I'm like, this is a pure visceral action experience, and it does it to the utmost level. Like, yes, there's symbolism, and you can draw these like you can make these cool connections, but that's not the reason I come to watch this movie. But it is interesting, though. There's definitely other things to think about with this film. And for some reason, I just don't feel like... I haven't thought about going down those routes to really like dissect all of that. I'm just like, no, just throw in Mad Max. I'm just gonna just... And
that is fine.
Yeah.
Everyone needs those movies. I'm telling you, man. Like...
Yeah.
I don't know if you had another point, Alex, but I do want to talk before this wraps up. I do want to talk about Charlize Theron because I wouldn't say, I mean, everybody's fine in this movie. I don't really feel like
we have to bring her up because she's been like a mainstay of our podcasting history.
That's part of it, yes. But also because I think that this kind of redirected her career, and I could be wrong, but I kind of have this feeling in my head that Charlize Theron was just like, she was a really good actress and people knew her and whatever, and then Fury Road happened, and then she became kind of like what it happened to Angelina Jolie at some point. She became more of an action star. So I just, at least that I know of, she's done since then. She did Atomic Blonde, which I haven't seen, and then she was just in that Netflix comic book adaptation. Is it The Old Guard, The New Guard? It's kind of like an action movie as well. And I mean, they were selling it as an action movie. And so now she's Now, when I think of Charlize Theron, I think of that really good actress that is making
That was
action
in
movies.
Reindeer Games.
Yes. From Reindeer Games to Atomic Blonde, the Charlize Theron autobiography. How do we feel about Charlize Theron pre-Fury Road, post-Fury Road, in Fury Road? I'll just start by saying that I was, on this rewatch, I was surprised that how, I guess in my head, I had built up Furiosa as this really kind of like silent character that didn't show her emotions that much. And but rewatching it, I was like, that's not the case at all. She's a badass, but she is vulnerable. The one that is mostly monosyllabic and doesn't do much is Max. And I found actually that was a nice surprise on my rewatch. But I don't know, how do you guys feel about Charlize Theron coming into this movie, leaving this movie where she is now?
Oh, I love her. And I think the moment that does it for me is weirdly right after we have our Girls Gone Wild sequence with the girls and taking the
the white t-shirt
t-shirt contest. The scene when Max is trying to get the chains off of his face or whatever his mask is, and just seeing her, like, you can see her calculating everything in her head as this is happening, and you know exactly what she's thinking. She's looking for exactly the right opportunity to go for him. And I wasn't sold on her character until that moment, but when they have that first action sequence, that's like, it sells it completely. Like, this is how you do Furiosa, like, or this character, like that's like the proving grounds for that character. And then taking it forward, you understand kind of why she is doing this. And there's a scene too towards the end where she's been stabbed, and when you see her take the truck and just burst through that other car and like pieces go everywhere, and it does this like cut to her face, and she just has this like, she has literal tears coming out of her eyes, and just this just pure rage in her face. Like, that moment was like, hell yeah, give me
Theron sold it.
Yeah, give me the Furiosa movie. I'll take it right now. And I was honestly kind of disappointed when it was announced that it would be an Anya Taylor-Joy prequel, because I'm like, no, dude, you had it here. Like, you set up this character perfectly to be in her own movie, and now you're doing a prequel? So, like, how's that movie gonna end? She gets imprisoned by Immortan Joe?
Bit of a bummer.
Sounds real fun, but like,
we made all this progress for her to have her ending, and now we have to like go back to her history.
Yeah, like I want to see her like go off on her own journey. Like, I want to see what happens after this movie. Yeah, obviously it doesn't look like she's gonna have a super great time at this place she ends up at the end of this movie, but like, yeah, I want to see the Furiosa movie. Like, yeah,
the one we deserve, not the one we're getting.
Yeah, like, because she, and she is kind of the protagonist of this movie. I still think it's Mad Max that they want us to believe is the protagonist, but she's like she's the biggest presence.
She's the Ripley to Mad Max's Alien.
Yeah, exactly.
So Max is the xenomorph? Is that what you're saying?
Mad Max is the xenomorph.
Yeah, he's the xenomorph. Alex, how do you feel about Miss Theron? Has this movie changed the way you feel about her?
Having, Hancock we did recently, and it's another movie that is in the rare class of movies that I would say I actively hate. And having watched Prometheus this month in my daily horror movie viewings, because that movie becomes a horror movie at the end, so I classify it as that. And she is god awful in that. So I'm getting to a positive here. Seeing her in this and being reminded that she's that person in Monster, that actress that's capable of that higher level. And it's effortless in this. It's not even like they're really asking her, to do much. It was rewarding, probably more so than, I know Tom Hardy's great. I don't need to be reminded of that because he hasn't made something like Hancock or, had a performance as bad as Prometheus or Aeon Flux or something like that. So seeing this and being reminded that Charlize Theron's still that bitch, that's reaffirming, and I appreciate that. So I thought she was great. And this was shortly removed from Snow White and the Huntsman, which I still think I am the biggest fan in the world of that movie. This is obviously on a different level, but yeah, I thought she was great. And for me personally, in the movies I've watched recently, seeing this again was rewarding to be reminded that she's that talented that we thought she was and is.
Yeah, I've always thought of Charlize Theron, I think, as now that you list them all together, I'm like, yeah, she's in a lot of bad movies, but in my mind, I guess the really good ones stick out. So I always think of her as just like, if Charlize Theron is in it, she's not gonna be bad. And we disagree on Prometheus. I think she's fine in Prometheus. She has a really bad line in Prometheus. That's the difference. Yeah, she has a moment in Prometheus that Meryl Streep couldn't have, sold. But so I guess just going back to what I said at the beginning, this is just a very selfish complaint, and it's just that I like Charlize Theron as an actress. I don't really need Charlize Theron as an action star. I understand that the industry needs Charlize Theron as an action star, and just more power to her and more power to the industry for embracing that. But it's kind of like my own selfish problem with Angelina Jolie for a while, where I was like, she's a really good actress, and all she's doing is these action movies, and she's good in them, but it's kind of at some point the novelty wears off, and it's not limited to actresses. I mean, Liam Neeson he's a really good actor, but now he must be on his 10th, 11th, just somewhat generic action movie. So
Sylvester Stallone.
We don't need to talk about Stallone anymore on this podcast for a while.
We exhausted that.
Yes.
Yeah. But to your point, I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I really hope that she doesn't get stuck on just the action genre, because as good as she is in it, I think that there's just a lot more than that she can do.
Yeah.
And so it would be a shame to just see her, I mean, I get it. It would have been awesome to get the Furiosa sequel starring her, but it's even more exciting to just think of her doing something else, using the clout that she got from Furiosa. I haven't seen Atomic Blonde. I don't know how that worked as a follow-up, and I wasn't crazy about the Netflix movie, but at least, if she has that power now where she can get that kind of stuff made, that's good. But I don't know. I just want her to do something like Monster again, in between projects, in between big projects.
When did Young Adult fall in here? Was that before or after Fury Road?
I was just about to drop that because I never saw that and would really like to. That was 2011. That was before Snow White and the Huntsman and Prometheus.
I don't remember it being that far back. Wow.
Yeah, that was a while ago. Well, she did actually. You know what? I take it back, and this is just because I didn't really like the movie. But she just did that movie a couple of years ago where she has a kid. She has two kids, maybe. She's married to
Tully.
Yes, yeah. Where she
Written
gets
by
like
Diablo Cody. No, thank you.
Hey, Young Adult is also written by Diablo Cody. You got to give him a chance.
They're both a Jason Reitman combo. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Tully is actually. Life just handed me an answer to what I was complaining about, because Tully is, I guess, the kind of project that I don't want her to stop getting involved with. It's just drama, and she's great in it, and I'm pretty sure it happened after Fury Road, so that's good.
Well, there you go. All right, bringing this home, I do letter grading. Julio does a star rating. I don't know what y'all do.
They do 1 to 10.
Franchise killers. 1 to 10. Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure I know there's going to be at least 1 10 in the bunch. So let's let's throw it over. What on 1 to 10, where y'all landed on your scale?
Go ahead, guys.
I guess I'll start. I'll start with a 9.5.
I'm going with a 9.
10.
Tremendous.
Well, I don't remember what I gave it the first time I watched it. I'm pretty sure I was already in Letterboxd, but I don't remember. It's, even though they're very different movies, and I was definitely more passionate about the other one than this one, I'm going to put it on the level of Baby Driver, in the sense that I'm going to give it 4 stars.
Oof. That's an insult to Mad Max Fury Road.
If you're not if you take out the Baby Driver side of it, the score on its own, I will accept.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I just, I think that if I made clear, just don't come at me telling me that this is about the meaning of life or about, I don't know, the politics in America. I mean, that's projecting a little too much. It's a fun action movie. It's a really well made action movie, actually. And yeah, so 4 stars. Alex, I think you kind of like gave it away earlier. Did you say B or B plus?
Yeah, I was about to say almost completely echoing your sentiments. Yeah, not a plus. It's just a dead center B, which may sound like a better grading or ranking than some of my words and inflections were, but that comes from a place of exactly what you're saying, of me just not at all thinking this is some seminal classic or anything like that. But for what it is, very well made. I have no disinterest or aspersions of ever watching it again. I will definitely seek this out. I might even own it in my collection one day. I'll get the chrome and black edition. Who knows? Which, just looking up on Google really quickly, I guess those were limited release because cheapest I saw was like $35. B, it's great for what it is, and I think that's where I'll leave it because I've definitely done enough talking about this movie for one evening. So we got that out of the way. Tremendous discussion. Now is the most important part of this episode, where we throw it over to the franchise killers. Give us the whole rundown. Where are you at? Where can we find you? Where can we follow you? Where do we download the episodes? Just give it all to us.
And what's coming up on the show?
Yeah, you can find us pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. Whatever you're listening to this on, it's probably on the same platform. We thrive off of those 5-star Apple reviews. Those help with the algorithm.
Yeah, no one listens to my call to action, so if you're gonna listen here. Please, come on.
They're a special type of awful.
Yeah.
Just like. But yeah, next episode, I mean, we're right in the middle of doing our Robin Williams miniseries, so we just released The Fisher King, and the next one up is going to be, well, this episode drops in November, correct?
Yeah,
November
all of
10th,
these will be
so,
done.
Yeah, that'll be pretty much done. You'll have a Flubber out there, we'll have Goodwill Hunting out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, of course, don't forget, we're going to be doing Good Morning Vietnam!
Yeah, that one too. Good Morning Vietnam. Yeah, all those episodes will be out probably by that time.
I think so.
Maybe. No, not quite. Not quite. We're like, it's crazy. We're at the end of October. I didn't even realize that. But yeah, that's what's on the playlist for now. So yeah, check us out.
All right, well, guys, it's been great having you. It was I couldn't have thought of a better way for this to play out, to bring you with a movie that the three of you adore, and then have you talk trash about it for over an hour.
It was tough.
Thank you for coming, guys. And Alex, I guess you want to throw us to the end of the episode.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and go into our perennial plugs. We start off by giving a thanks to the Festive Years, who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand, take us home with Summer of 99. Head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster, Hans Rothwieser, he's the man behind our logo, the graphics on our webpage, the graphics on our Patreon page. He's just a Renaissance man. And actually, Hans has a surprise coming. Well, not so much a surprise because I told him on Twitter. But next episode is finally our Doctor Who movie episode, which he requested over a year ago. We're finally getting to it. So, Hans, sorry it took so long, but I'm sure it will be worth it. So, if you guys want to contact Hans and talk to him about Doctor Who, or request a logo, or tell him how cool his podcasts are, just reach him on mildemonios@hotmail.com. That's MILDEMONIOS, or on Twitter @mildemonios, or you can check out his website, mildemonios.pe. Thank you, Hans, for all your support.
And thank you to Ms. Zoe Perez, our social media guru, who helps curate our social media. If you haven't already, go over to facebook.com/Contrarian Prime. Give us a like, follow, whatever the fuck you do on Facebook anymore these days. There's some exclusive videos there of us discussing trivia and behind the scenes about the movies that we cover. And we're also on Instagram @Contrarian Prime. There, Zoe puts together some videos, audio clips, interactive graphics, all the things that Julia and I are too old to figure out how to do. Zoe, we appreciate what you do for us. And with that all out of the way, one more time we give a thanks to the Franchise Killer for heading on board with us today. But that's going to do it for the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
Following your dreams, but even so